Good morning, Brother Raymond. I say Brother Raymond because you're a cultural icon in your own right, apart from any titles you may have been given by government. You are very loved in the country as someone who has contributed immensely to a sense of nationhood and cultural rendition. And so it's a high honor and privilege for me this morning to be interviewing you and to ask you about your life. For those of you who are unaware of who the gentleman is, Raymond Lawrence is the former chief cultural officer, I take it, so I remember it, of Dominica. But prior to that, from his high school days at the St. Mary's Academy, which was and still is a prestigious Catholic, Roman Catholic Church run school for boys in Roseau, the capital of Dominica. He had been involved in cultural rendition of various types, and I remember him as a founding director of the Waitu Kabuli Dancers. So Raymond, good morning, sir. How are
Yeah,
you?
good morning to you, Gabriel. I'm doing fine, thank you. And thank you very much for inviting me onto this program. I appreciate that very much. You too, Gabriel, have contributed quite a bit in your area of work, in your career. And I just want to, again, thank you very much for inviting me to this program.
Well, Raymond, I will venture to say, sir, that you've been an inspiration to me, though from afar. But I mean, I've known you since I was, of course, in elementary school, and you always presented as a disciplined, um, uh, compassionate, sharing person who shared the knowledge and the wisdom and pride in culture that I believe influenced my generation. So I guess we're in a mutual admiration society called the acronym for that would be MASS, but it's not old MASS, it's the new. So let me ask you, Raymond, where were you born and when were you born?
So I was born on the 14th of January, 1954. I was born in Roseau, the capital of Dominica, and in fact, I was born in our home, our house
Interesting.
located on Hillsborough Street, because from what my memory serves me right, my mom delivered all her children at home.
I see.
But when after my mother and father got married, because she was originally from Atkinson. He was
Mhm.
born in Qualiho, although his father came from Granby, that's my grandfather. As a head teacher, he was relocated or transferred to Qualiho as head teacher, and then he got married in Qualiho, and that's where Daddy was born. And then after that, subsequently, they moved to Marigot. So Daddy met Mammy, where he was living in Marigot at the time. She was in Atkinson. But after they
Mhm.
got married, when they moved to town, they moved to Pottersville.
Mhm.
So the first, let's say, two or three children out of the 12 children that they had together
12.
were born in Pottersville, and all the
Mhm.
rest of us were born in Roseau itself. Roseau
Amazing.
Central.
Amazing. Raymond, let me ask you, what was your father's name?
Hugh Lawrence. He was Hugh Lawrence, and my mother was Doris Lawrence, née Durand.
Okay, so she's her surname prior to marriage was Durand, Durand. So are you related to Tim
Yeah.
Durand?
Probably, yes.
Okay.
I would think so.
Yes, and Tim Durand would have been one of your classmates or someone who went to school around your time.
Yes, that's right. Yes. In
And for
St.
those of
Mary's
you
Academy.
listening, yeah, Tim Durand is a former newscaster and the owner, the proprietor of Dominican News Online. Raymond, where did your father attend school, if you know, if you remember?
So, well, he went to school. As I said, he was born in Collyho. So his very, very early years of school were in Collyho. And then when my grandfather, that's his father, was transferred as a head teacher to
Mhm.
Marigot, then Daddy took the rest of his schooling there
I
in
see.
Marigot.
So he was the
And
son of a school teacher, a headmaster.
that's right,
So,
yes.
so you know, Raymond, in the culture of those days, if you're the son of a school teacher or a headmaster, that's even more lofty a position to hold in the society, wouldn't you say?
Well, I guess you could look at it that way.
Yes. So did
Um,
your grandfather, what was your grandfather's name?
his name was James Lawrence.
Did you know him?
No, I don't recall him at all.
I see.
Um, but he was originally from Granby.
I see.
He had, in fact, someone had arranged for him to study in Antigua at I believe it was a college in Antigua.
Is it
But
Michael? There are two Michaels, I believe. There's a Michael in Jamaica and there's Michael in Antigua, I believe.
yeah, so that's my grandfather. So I'm not sure what the name of that academy or college was at the time, but he did spend 1 or 2 years at the college in Antigua. That's my grandfather. And then he returned to
James.
Granby, and that's when they appointed him as, I guess they call them head teachers in
Yeah.
those days of the Granby School. And then he was transferred to Solihull, where he met my grandmother on my dad's side, Lucy Gardier. And then the first set of children, as I mentioned earlier, were born in Solihull, including my father. And
Okay.
then subsequently, my grandfather was transferred again to
Mhm.
Marigot.
Yes.
And the rest of the children, there were about like 6 of them in all, were born in Marigot. And daddy, his early years of education, as I mentioned, were in Marigot.
Yeah. Did he ever get to go to any of the high schools, like the Dominica Grammar School or the St. Mary's Academy, which were the only two schools for boys in those days?
Right, no,
When I say only two
because
schools, only two high schools, I'm sorry, for boys in those
no,
days.
because by the time he got married and he moved to town, he was already out of school and focusing on, I guess, his marriage life with my
Mhm.
mother. But he started to work at Roll. Roll had a store very close to where the old market or Dobini market is located. And he worked with Roll there for 25 years. And then subsequently, he got a job with the Public Works Department, where by that time, my brother, um,
So, so as we were saying, Raymond, your father worked for the Rolls, and the Rolls were planter family. They had an estate. So, what kind of was it a shop that they owned next to the Dorbini Market?
yes, I guess you could call it a store, yes, and selling
Mhm.
a lot of household goods and various items. The business was very successful. Um, but of course, I wasn't born. Well, I guess when I was born, he was still working at the road, but I don't, because I was so young at the time, I don't remember
Mhm.
all the details. But I remember him working at the Public Works Department for
I
some
see.
years. And he and my mother also had a shop as well of their own. Well, maybe more than one business, I would say. So
Mhm.
he had where the Garaway Hotel is located now.
Mhm.
My parents had a small shop facing the People's Park. So
I
it's on
see.
the other side of the old market, facing Fort Young or the People's Park, but in the location where the Garaway Hotel is right now. So
So
they
let me
had a
ask you
shop.
this. Let me ask you this question. By the time, let's say you're 5, 6 years old, coming into consciousness, were they working at that shop in Roseau?
Yes, I have memories, vague memories of the shop and going to the shop and all of that. So I remember the shop and going to the shop. Yes, I
Mhm.
remember what it looked like. And in addition to that, Daddy also had a sweet drinks factory located now by our house, where our house is right now on Hillsborough Street. So he
That's
had,
amazing. That's fascinating because when I grew up, there was, of course, Coca-Cola was already on Valley Road. Then in the Pond area, Bath Road area, was KB Cola. That's Cara Beverages.
that's
The
right, yeah.
cadet band actually used their old factory for band practice. And then, of course, there was 7 Up, which was on Goodwill Road, going down by where the Goodwill School is in that area. So you're saying your parents
So,
owned a little soda factory or soft drink
so
factory?
they had a sweet drink factory, and we're talking about now before Coca-Cola came to Dominica. Because
Amazing.
I remember him saying that when Coca-Cola came in, and then of course you have all these new drinks and juicy and whatever, then of course it kind of gave the sweet drinks factory. I think there were like maybe two sweet drinks factories in Roseau. Maybe could have been three. I'm not
I
sure.
was told it was Tri-Hill. Is that one you remember?
No, I don't remember
Okay.
that
So
one.
what was
But
the name of your parents' soft drink factory?
it was just for, well, it didn't have a name as such. I just remember them referring to it as the Sweet Drinks Factory, the Sweet
I see.
Drinks Factory.
Do you
And
remember
people,
drinking it yourself?
yes, yes, and it tastes very sweet, as the name implies.
It was an
But but
aerated beverage, aerated
great,
beverage.
yes, but very very tasty. Um, and satisfying and so on. And he did well for a number of years. And as I
Mhm.
mentioned, he said that when the new competition came in from the other modern factories at the time, like Coca-Cola and the others, then that sort of gave them competition, stiff
And Raymond, this is
competition.
exactly what I meant about this kind of format of interview, which is free flowing, because I would not have even known that your past, at least your family's past, in commercial, um, enterprise involved a soft drink factory. So where would the factory have been if you remember?
It was um, it was located right next to our house on Hillsborough Street. So that's where the factory was located. So there were two attached to our house were like two small houses at the time. And that's where the sweet drink factory was located, right
Mhm.
at the corner of, because we are very close. The two small houses were actually at the corner of Hillsborough
I see.
Street. And then they were attached to the main family home right there as
Yes.
well, close to the
Yeah.
corner on Hillsborough Street.
I
Yes.
want you say Hillsborough Street. Would that be Hillsborough Street and coming to the intersection with Queen Mary Street?
It used to be Queen Mary and now Independence Street.
I see. Okay.
Yes.
I'm dating myself, Brother Raymond. But having said that, do you remember how old you would have been when you went into the factory to look at operations?
I probably was about maybe 4, 5, 6, 7, that kind of age there.
Yes, indeed. And
Um,
when the operation, did they have a conveyor belt and they had the capping on the bottles and so on?
No, I don't remember the conveyor belt. In fact, I don't remember a lot of detail about the process and the equipment and so involved. Um, but I just remember all the machinery was there, and he had a couple of people working for him. My mother used to help when she had the time because she was a stay-home mom, a housewife.
Yes. Mhm.
A lot of that was the tradition at the time that you
Yes,
have the
yes, yes.
stay-home moms, and plus there were 12 of us. There were 12 children,
Yes.
so
Can you give me the names of your siblings?
it's quite a few children. So first we had, well, again, with my both parents, because daddy had two boys now before he got married to my mother.
What were their
So
names?
their names were James Lawrence and Randolph Lawrence. They've Well, James just died last year in Atlanta, Georgia. He was 94. And
Okay.
Randolph died a couple of years ago in England. He too died at 94 as well.
Amazing.
Yes. So that these two boys were daddies. So our, half brothers, if you want to put it that way,
Yes.
daddy's
What did
children
James do, if you
before.
remember, in England?
James he was the one in Georgia,
Oh,
and
I see.
Randolph was
Atlanta.
the one in England. Yes. Um, so before he had gone to the States, Atlanta, James spent many, many years in St. John, USVI,
I see.
and he was operating a taxi business there for many, many
I see.
years.
I see.
I think by the time he went up to Georgia, he had retired.
I
So
see.
he had some of his children had moved to Georgia, so he went to join them there.
Mhm.
And Randolph was into business. I think he worked with some firms up there in England. I don't know the names or anything. I just know, that is what I remember. So those were the two before my dad got married to my mother. But when they got married, the first child, Wendell.
Yes.
Wendell
Is that
Lawrence.
Wendell?
Yeah, that's right. Yes. And Gabriel, I think you had an uncle who was Wendell as well.
Our father was Wendell.
Father, sorry. Yes.
Yes, yes. He has a long
I
younger
was
brother,
thinking of
LM and HL.
yes, I was thinking of HL. Um, yeah, so Wendell, then there was Zilla. Well, her nickname was Sissy. We refer to her as Sissy, but she was really
Let's do
Zilla
it this
Lawrence.
way. Let's do it this way, Brother Raymond. When you mention a sibling like Wendell, tell me what they did ultimately, like maybe either a teacher or engineer or whatever, and then we'll just go down
Okay.
that way. So what did Wendell do?
So Wendell was a civil engineer,
Yes.
and after he returned from McGill University in Canada, they appointed him as the chief technical officer at the Public Works Department. And
Let me
then
stick a
subsequently,
pin in there. Let me stick a pin in there. Not only I remember the name Wendell because it's our father's first name, but I believe he may well be one of our first local civil engineers in that first tranche. Am I correct?
I would think so, yes.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would think he was one of the early civil engineers in Dominica for sure, one
And
of the
yet,
pioneering.
yes.
And,
And he
and then
attended McGill in Canada.
yes, and then he worked on a lot of the roads at the time that they were creating in Dominica, in the road network. He was the main person as chief technical officer, responsible, in a sense, for those projects and for implementing those projects. So he played a very important building bridges as well. And in fact, the bridge at Rosalie, that concrete big bridge that has weathered all storms and hurricanes in Dominica, and it's still there, and they're still using it, was actually built. I know he was the one who actually built that bridge, among others, and roads as well, cutting roads, new roads, and
Well, let me
building
just
those
say
new
this.
roads
A
as
friend
well.
of ours just died. He was in the Carnival fire but survived. That was Emmanuel Loverty Greenaway. And he was a bulldozer operator. So he would have been working under your brother, Wendell Lawrence.
I
Is
would
Wendell's?
imagine.
Yes, you know Loverty.
Yes.
You know Loverty Greenaway.
Yes.
The welder, yes, yes.
And then
It-
when I said earlier that my father had gone to work at the Public Works Department, so after 25 years at Rose, Wendell was then Chief Technical Officer. So in a sense, my father went to join his son at the
Indeed.
Public Works Department in one of the offices at the Public Works Department. But anyway, so
Amazing. Where's
Wendell,
Wendell now?
so Wendell passed.
Oh, I'm sorry to
Wendell
hear.
died about 4 years ago. Yes.
How old was he?
Uh, He was 83 at the time
I see.
when he died.
Mhm.
Zilla came after him. She migrated to New York,
How do you
maybe
spell Zilla? Zilla?
Zillah.
Okay.
And she before she left for the States, she was Carnival Queen of Dominica. She was a Miss Dominica
Amazing.
of 1956. Um, She won the title, and then a couple of years later, she migrated to New York, and that's where she was living all her life. Of course, she came back on
Yes. Let me
vacation and
ask you
things like
this.
that.
She would have gone to the convent high school, I take it.
Yes, and after she left, um, well, I guess some students were hired, employed as teachers at the convent high school, even if for a year or 2 years or whatever, before they went overseas or before they went on to do other things. But she was one of those that taught at the Convent High School right
Amazing.
after she left school. My sister Jean of Siffleur Montagne Chorale also taught at the Convent High School. So, in fact, I have two sisters who actually taught at the Convent High School before they went
Outstanding.
away. Yes.
And Jean is Jean, Jean.
Yes. So Jean came a little lower down. So then there's Wendell, there's Zilla. Atfield is his original name, but he became a Muslim. He went to England, migrated to England around
What was
1959.
his original name?
Atfield, A double
A-T.
T, A double T, A double T Field.
Okay.
And but he became a Muslim in England and changed his first name to Dawood, Daoud. So he became Dawood. In fact, he just lost his wife just about a week ago. So we
Oh, my
had
condolences.
this sad news in our family. Yes, his wife was Jamaican.
Yes.
She was 81.
What did he do? Did he go to university?
Yes, and then he also worked with different companies. So he was more into social development in the field of social services and social
Mhm.
development
I see.
in the offices in England. I'm not because he was out there in England. I'm not sure exactly, under which part of the government services or which ministry or whatever. But I just know he was in that field, the
Yeah.
social services.
Would you happen to know where he studied or?
No, no, I don't have
Okay.
the names of the places because when he left, I was 59. I was 5 years old.
Yes. So he
So
was part of what they call the Windrush generation, the people who went after the
that's
war.
right. So he went on that boat to England, and then that's when he got into school. But by those years, I was small at the time, so I
Yes.
don't recall. And plus, he wasn't here, so
Yes.
it was and it's way back when. I just know he worked many, many years in the social services, social development, just like my brother,
Yes.
Anthony in Florida.
Before we move
So,
on to the other siblings, Zila, did she go to university in the United States?
no, um, she she did various courses, especially in the legal area. She wasn't a lawyer, or rather, she didn't become a lawyer, but she became a legal secretary.
Yes.
And Bernadette, my sister, followed suit in the same legal area, but as legal secretaries. So Sissy did training, years of training in that
Okay.
area, but not necessarily a degree in law, no.
I see.
But she did study for the positions that she held, and that's what she did all her life. And
Yeah.
Bernadette as well, my other
Yes.
sister, both of them worked in legal departments, but as legal secretaries.
Okay. Was Rommel
Uh,
Lawrence your brother?
no, and a lot of people think Rommel is our brother.
Yes.
Rommel
Yes.
is related to us. Rommel is part of our family. But as far as I know, and he would probably say the same thing, I don't think we are related.
I see.
We just happen to have the same surname, Lawrence.
Yes. Yes. A slight
Uh,
resemblance, but um,
yes, some people have said that as well. Yes.
yes, indeed. So let me ask you about Gene, because apart from yourself and Wendell, who I knew, the engineer I knew of, I wouldn't say I knew him. Gene seemed to be in the most alongside you in culture, very well known because she was the director of the Siffleur Montagne Chorale.
And Corral, that's right. Yes.
So
Um,
where
so
was Gene educated aside from the convent high school?
so then she did not go on to university. But as I said, she taught after Convent High School. She taught at the convent for a couple of years. While she was at the Convent High School, that's when she formed the Siffleur Montagne Chorale, which recorded two hit albums. I would say very up to now, Siffleur
Yes.
Montagne music is played 50 something years later. The group started in 1969, and then they recorded, I think, in 1970 and 1971. And then she got married to an Antiguan in 1972. That's Alexis Mathurin. So after 2 or 3 years with Siffleur Montagne, um, she she got married to an Antiguan and they migrated to Antigua. So then, but her songs became, and she composed a number of folk songs and became very, very popular in Dominica. She organized carnival bands with the Convent High School that was successful. A couple of times they won Band of the Year and Queen of the Bands and things like that. She was she is, sorry, extremely gifted musician, especially on the piano. But she played other things, like
Where did
accordion
she
and guitar.
study? Where did she study the piano?
At home, um, uh, Mrs. Mrs. Bully, she got classes from Mrs. Bully. She got classes from Mrs. Kuzla. And then after that, it was pretty much she um, sort of just developing on her own and furthering her interest in the music. She went to
Just stick a
do
pin in there for me for a moment, Raymond.
yeah.
For persons who will be listening to this video who may not understand the social construct of Dominica, Mrs. Kool-Latig and Mrs. Bully came from the elite families in Roseau. Louis Kool-Latig was the first Dominican governor under colonial rule, and the Bully family came from a very distinguished family of civil servants. And of course, Alwyn Bully, your colleague, and my former teacher at the grammar school, came from that family as well. So those are the families of distinction in the city of Roseau. Is that correct?
Yes, uh-huh. Yes, I
Or
would say
eminent,
so.
call them eminent
Yes.
families. Yeah.
Yes.
So let me
Um,
ask you a question. So your family had a piano in the house.
yes.
Mhm.
We had
So
a
so you would
piano
you yeah.
since I was a young boy. Um, and so Jean played the piano, and then of course my mother sent some of us to learn piano. I started to learn piano as well. I used to play piano, believe it or not.
Mhm.
And Bernadette, um, and then I think Tony to a certain extent. But apart from Jean and musical instruments and music, there were a number of siblings in the family who played and did well in their field of music as well. I mean, both Tony and Bernadette were members of Swinging Stars. Tony played the rhythm guitar, I think it was, for Swinging Stars for a number of years. Bernadette was one of the first. Barbara Bully wasn't a member, as Norman explained to me, but she sang before Bernadette with Swinging Stars. She would make guest appearances. But Bernadette became like the first female full-time member, so to speak, of Swinging Stars and was
Vocalists.
their lead vocalist, their lead
Amazing.
female vocalist. And Tony was also part of the band as well, while Bernadette was part of the band as well. And in fact, they toured the Swinging Stars to the States and I think other places.
Indeed.
Then Remy, my brother, played guitar. Atfield, my brother, played guitar. Wendell, the one I spoke about as a civilian, he played the cello, the big sort of
Yeah.
guitar-looking type. He had a jazz band as well that they used to practice at home.
What was the
About
jazz band called, if you remember it?
yes, I don't remember him for the jazz band. I just
And
remember
who were some
Mr.
of the
Bain.
members, if you remember?
Mr. Bain. There was a Mr. Bain who lived at Goodwill. There was our cousin Dowie. There was a Dowie that was part of it. And there was another one, the drummer, who was originally from Barbados. I still remember his name well. I don't remember it now, but he was part of that jazz band. They used to rehearse at home.
Mhm.
So Wendell was part of that band playing the big cello.
So let's do this now, Raymond. You see what's evolving? We're now getting a sense, we're now getting some flavor that you grew up in sort of a home where music and the arts was in ferment to the degree that you had a jazz band practicing in your power.
Yes.
I mean, this is amazing. And I would have never have known that. So you had how many? Give me the names of the musicians and the instruments they played. Let's start with Wendell. What did Wendell play?
The cello, and Mr. Bain played the piano.
Okay, just give me the
And then,
siblings and the instruments. So
oh, the siblings. Sorry, the siblings.
Tony played
So
rhythm
Wendell
guitar.
played the cello, yes.
Okay,
Tony played rhythm guitar.
right.
Um, s- um, to, we mentioned Tony. Remy played the guitar as well. Um,
Remy, Remy.
yes, played the guitar. Um, well, I don't really say I play piano, but I did play piano at the time.
Okay,
At the
okay.
time when I was growing up, I did play piano myself. Um, and then you had the singers. So Zilla, Jean, and Bernadette were really the what you call maybe more outstanding singers of the family. So Zilla
Vocalists,
sang
huh?
more operatic and so on songs in the States, especially in church and all of that. Jean, of course, sang with Siffleur Montagne Chorale and recorded. It's one of the ones people would remember is Tutsa Adai. So it's actually her voice, the popular song now. It's
Yeah.
like a national anthem.
Yeah, you grew up,
It's
I mean, we grew up hearing, I mean, Siffleur Montagne Chorale, for those who will be listening to this in the future, was without a doubt the most eminent uh, chorale
at the
organization in
time.
Dominica at the time.
So,
And the
mhm.
first, but most likely, from all reports, the first to record long playing. In those days, there were two kinds of vinyl albums: the 45, which was a short playing album, and the LP, which would have maybe a dozen songs on it. And I know that they had there's at least one LP. I may even have a copy here, and it's
They had
online.
they recorded two LPs, two full
Two LPs.
albums, two of
Yeah.
them. Yes.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And it would I
I,
be correct, Raymond, when I said that an LP would have about a dozen sounds?
yes. So
Okay.
the first album was Isle of Magic, and the second full album was Folk Expression. And then in addition to that, you're right, they did the 45s, and they did a Christmas 45, I remember. One song on either side. One of them was a medley that Jean had. Both of them were songs that she had adapted from traditional Christmas songs and sort of made them more localized, giving them a sort of a
Folksy,
Caribbean
yeah.
and folk rhythm. Uh, but she composed, I would say, most of the songs on the albums, and then she did most of them in Creole. I would also want to mention here, Gabriel, although we're talking about the family, that sometimes when people speak about Creole music in Dominica, I think they go back, let's say, to the 70s. I'm not sort of criticizing anybody, so
Yes, yes,
that's not the
yes, yes.
point of it. But generally speaking, when we speak of Creole music in Dominica, we go back to the 70s and we don't go further back about Creole music. Because if we have to
Stick a
go,
pin in that, Raymond. Could that be, and that is why we're doing this, could that be because of the absence of the written record? Because remember, for my generation, what I
no, because
remember,
Siffleur Montagne, when I'm talking about Siffleur Montagne, that's the point I was going to make, that they were there, they started in 69. And even before Siffleur Montagne, there was Mrs. Corderon, who was promoting folk music from the 1950s.
indeed. So
She
stick
had
a pin in there. That's Mabel Sissy Colorado. Tell us about her.
well, she also taught at the convent high school. But she was a boy before she got married to this French engineer who had come to Dominica, and he was Corderon. So then when they got married, her name changed to Mabel Corderon, and they migrated to Venezuela, where most of her children were born. And then she returned to Dominica, and that was when, in the 50s, she started off her own Creole group. I would call it a Creole group. Um, and it was called Kyrie Artistic Troupe. My sister, Zilla, was part of that troupe as well in the 1950s. So they promoted Creole, and that's why I was mentioning the part about promotion of Creole music way back So she composed a lot of their own songs as Mrs. Corderon. So the group sang Creole folk songs. They did the Creole dances, and she also promoted the Creole wear. Mrs. Corderon was big on Creole wear, the duet, the jip, and all of that, the men's national wear. We're talking about way back in the 50s. But in terms of Creole music as well, remember our Creole music in Dominica goes back hundreds of years with the Jinping music and all of that, and the Bel Air. So I just wanted to make the point that we need to sort of broaden our understanding and appreciation of Creole music in Dominica. It just doesn't start in the 70s, with all respect to the bands and artists and Kadas music and Bouillon and all of that. I'm not thinking that at all. That's fine. Everybody made wonderful contributions. But it didn't just start in the 70s. It started long before that with people like Mabel Sitsi Cordero, and I would like to add Jean Lawrence Mathurin, my sister, who composed a lot of Creole music. And those Creole songs are still very popular today. They have become anthems in Dominica's culture. So I just wanted to make that point.
No, it's an excellent point. And for those of you who might be listening to this long after we're gone, Raymond and I, the Siffleur Montagne Chorale, for me and many of us in the diaspora, is like the soundtrack of Dominican life itself.
Precisely,
I
yes.
listened to it on my way to court, and our mother died. It formed part of the video tribute we did because it was sort of emblematic of the. Because remember, for those of you again who would not have lived through the 60s and 70s, there were very few Dominican albums. In fact, I think the first band I know, and there may have been others too, there are two bands I know that maybe have had albums. One was Gaylord, Power Union, GPU, and Swing Stars. And the third organization, musical entity, was Siffleur Montagne Chorale,
Yes,
And
yes.
Siffleur Montagne Chorale occupied a very special place because whereas, Gaylord's Power Union and Swing Stars played what we would call carnival music or dance music, Siffleur Montagne Chorale, being a chorale, it played folk songs and there was no real competition, meaning it wasn't like there were many different albums, competing. Like for instance, you had in the United States, you had Elvis Presley and you had Jim Reeves and you had, Duke Ellington and you had Louis Armstrong. You had different organizations. Dominica being a small island, Siffleur Montagne Chorale was at the apex, and that music was music that you heard quite often at the time of National Day, what is now Independence Day.
That's right.
But even
Yes.
outside of that, for those who had gramophones, we'd call it in those days, or gram for short, that's what you'd hear. Because we had as I said, only three organizations involved with music that had LPs or long playing albums, had vinyl. Most of the vinyl we had came from the United States, some from England, and then the surrounding islands like Trinidad, we had Sparrow and so on, later on reggae from Jamaica. But as far as Dominican vinyl, that is the record that you would call wax, you play on a turntable. It was Swinging Stars, Gaylord's Power Union, but by far the most popular was Siffleur Montagne Chorale because it never went out of style and still. It never
And
went
I
out of
should have
style and still.
mentioned, yeah, should have mentioned the Gaylords. You mentioned them. I mean, although they sang a lot of their songs in English, but they had a kind of a folk sort of essence and influence to their music. And then they did sing some songs in Creole. And I should also mention La Jeune Étoile Chorale as well from Grand Bay at the time. Around the time of Siffleur Montagne as well, also had an album of folk songs as well.
How do you
Uh,
spell La Jeune Étoile Chorale, if you don't mind, Raymond?
well, on the album, now the Creole spellings have been standardized, but at the time, what they used on the album was the LA. They used sort of a French-based, more French spelling of the words. as I said, if you have to spell it now, the spelling is going to be different. But at the time on the albums, they spell it L-A for La, Jeune, Jeune, étoile E with an acute accent, Toile. Chorale would be Chorale. So that would
That's
be
what I
like,
thought. Yeah,
yeah.
but being the former chief cultural officer, I wanted to give you the primacy in giving me the spelling for purposes of the future. And
Right. So I,
Siffleur Montagne Chorale, if you can spell that for us, please.
well, again, I'm spelling it. As I said, the spellings have changed in the writing of the Creole has changed. Which spelled differently now, but I'm using what they used at the time on their albums. So at the time, Siffleur Montagne used S for Siffleur, Siffleur. For Montagne, they spelled it Montagene, and Chorale, Chorale.
Are you saying to me, Raymond, thank you very much, by the way, that La Jeune Étoile Chorale also had an album? Because I did not know that to be true.
Yes, that's right. Yes. And their music was quite popular too. Yeah, they certainly
Would
made an impact
they had an
on.
album? They had an LP
Yeah,
or
they had
40?
a, yes, they had an album of music.
Mm, mm,
And they had some very popular songs as well, along
yes.
with Siffleur Montagne Chorale.
Who was the director of that group, La Jeune Étoile
Um,
Chorale?
there were people. Well, I remember Adriana Henderson was part of that group, but she wasn't the leader at the time. There was his name is just slipping me now. He was principal of the Granby Secondary School at the time. Um, James Henderson, I think his name was, is. So he was one of the leaders of the group at the time. They had a couple of leaders, and they had a number of members from Granby. But I don't
Yeah. So
recall all the names
can you give us
offhand.
the time frame, Brother Raymond, between which year to what year that La Jeune
Well,
Étoile Chorale?
Siffleur
Let's start with La
Montagne
Jeune
was
Étoile Chorale.
so well. La Jeune Etoile, I think, came on a little after Siffleur Montagne. So Siffleur Montagne started in 1969, um, until around, well, Jean left Dominica in 1972. And following that, you had the Dominica folk singers coming on stream with Mema Joseph and Pearl Christian and so on. The La Jeune Étoile Chorale came on probably about 1971 or so, and lasted a couple of years as well, maybe 2 or 3 years or so. But during that time, they also recorded an album as
So,
well.
okay. So Siffleur Montagne Chorale was, let's say, 1969, 1972.
Yes, around that time, yes.
And that was succeeded by Dominica folk singers with people like Pearl Christian, and you mentioned another name,
Mema Joseph,
Mema Joseph,
Jennifer White
Jennifer
was a
White.
key person there too, yes. I think either Jennifer or Mema would have been the leader of the group at the time.
Mhm. Let me ask this. Well, is it the case that some of the people who constituted the Souffle Mutai Chorale later on, when your sister left for Antigua, moved into what is the Dominica Folk Singers?
Some of them, some of
Okay.
them,
Okay.
and then some of the members of the St. Alphonsus Choir, like Jennifer and Mema, I would imagine Pearl as well, um, form formed the Dominica Folk Singers, started
What
to
about
perform.
Jennifer Wallace? Was Jennifer Wallace part of that firmament?
So Jennifer Wallace, yes, and Jennifer Wallace was one of the members of the Siffleur Montagne Chorale as well with Jean.
Yes,
So she was part of that as well. And
indeed.
then she also became part of the Dominica Folk Singers.
Indeed.
She too has been.
So you've had people like uh, uh, Jennifer Wallace, Jennifer White Pearl Christian, who've been at this thing for at least 50 or more years.
Oh, yes, yes, for sure. Um,
I
some
mean, that
people have,
yeah. And that is so important to note because I believe a society is solid where there's continuity in institution. I believe in institutionalism. I believe that we have more solidity as a society, less flux, less chaos, where there are people who can be consistent in the practice of an art, consistent in scientific endeavor, consistent in civic leadership over a long period, because what happens is they then can create a virtuous mentorship circle and cycle where they pass on to those coming behind the sort of metrics of success that makes for a solid nation. So I'm happy to know when, because I know, I mean, some of those people related to me either by blood or just by having been around the same time with them. And when I reflect, we're talking 69, that's going on to, in a few years now, 60 years. And give me some names if you don't mind. I remember, I think Iwat Libla was in Siffleur Montagne Chorale. I am reliably informed. I've met a former Peace Corps volunteer by the name of Bob McGuire, who says he was part of that. And then I know people like Ken Robinson, who is a businessman in Roseau. I remember his face, you know.
yeah.
So give me some names of those persons in Siffleur Montagne Chorale that you remember.
Um, People like, well, Rahil Bernard, I remember. Um, one of the Edwards sisters, sister of Mary Jose Edwards, Portia Edwards, was part of that as well. I mentioned Jennifer White, Jennifer Wallace, Annette Toussaint was also part of the Siffleur Montagne Chorale. We had John Boston, one of the outstanding male singers. Clifton Bell was also part of that. You mentioned Ken Robinson. Um, there was a James, I don't remember his last name now.
What about the fire chief? He's passed on now. He later became the fire chief of Dominica. Was it Baptiste? Oh, boy, I remember him there.
Um, I don't remember offhand
Maybe
exactly.
come back to you. Yeah.
Yeah. You're referring to Julian John Baptist? Not sure
Yes.
if Julian was part of that. No, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Bill
So
Bruni was another one. Bill
so
Bruni.
let's
I
talk.
think
Yeah.
the Brunis are related to you all, but he was part of the Siffleur Montagne as well.
Let us talk about context, Raymond. I haven't gotten you to give me the rest of the 12 children, and you'll do that shortly. But why is it you think you had that explosion of the Whitey Kabuli, the Siffleur Montagne Chorale, Genetois Chorale? Did it have to do with the leadership of one Edward Oliver Leblanc and his interest in the arts? Because he is a poet. In fact, I have here with me a book that just came out that Ewart sent me. It's called Fragments of the Dawn and Other Poems by Edward Oliver Leblanc. There's a very beautiful picture of him and his wife there. And I
Yeah.
remember as a child, there were two or three magazines that he came out called Diez Dominica, Dominica Day magazines. And he also commissioned aspects of Dominican history with one Cecil Goodrich, who was the principal at that time of the Dominica Grammar School. Tell me about the context, political and social, that gave sort of wind to the sails of that cultural flowering on Dominica.
Yes, well, Leblanc certainly had a very important role to play in that sort of, what would I say, like burst of or explosion of culture in Dominica, and coming to understand and appreciate our identity as Dominican and Caribbean people as well. That was all part of it. Appreciating ourselves for who we are as a people and appreciating what
Raymond,
Dominica. Yes.
you were stuck for a little bit, but here we go. Or internet connection, but go ahead, please.
Okay. So I was saying Leblanc had a very critical role to play in helping to revive and rejuvenate Dominica's culture. I say revive and rejuvenate because he himself had said when he was introducing the National Day celebrations in 1965, I recall him saying that he thought the cultural traditions of Dominica were dying at the time. But he
Yes.
said he grew up with Jinping and all the folk dances and play. Being in those days, people performed. Well, they really just danced. It wasn't really a performance. Dance all the folk dances in their drawing rooms at the time. My mother said she knew all the dances that they danced in at Kingston, and everybody had Jinping music. And those were the dances that they did at the time: the quadrille, the heel and toe, the mazouk, and so. He had
Stick a
that
pin in
in
that,
his
Brother
book.
Raymond. Tell us what is Jinping music, for those who would not know.
Well, Jinping music is a creolization or a fusion of what I would say European influence and African influence, because the accordion instrument itself was brought to Dominica and introduced by the Europeans. The French love the accordion very much. The English love the accordion as well. We more attribute the accordion to French influence, but then the rest of the instruments were locally made by our African ancestors. You know, the drum, what we call the tabal, and some people say the tabu.
And that's a kind of
The
like it's like a tambourine.
Yes, it's a flat drum that you put on your thigh, and then you use your hand, and then you use both hands to drum, but not like the belly drum. It's up on your thigh,
Yes.
and then one of the fingers at the back is doing a rhythm at the back, and then the hand in front is also doing another rhythm. That's the tabal. Then you have the gouage, or in English, the grater, with that grating sound. So you have those seeds inside, and you have the punctured steel
Cylinder.
cylinder that they use for the gouage with a scraper, and then you have the boom boom. Sometimes we say boom pipe. Originally, it was made out of the waflo type material or pipe. Um, but then subsequently, I think probably the bamboo has been used as well. Bamboo has been used as well for the same boom boom. And then more recently, you find that some of the players are using the PVC pipes as well. I guess maybe it's
Mhm.
more convenient. It's
Yes.
less inconvenient in terms of trying to create and build the boom boom from scratch. But those are the four instruments. So in other words, the percussion instruments were African influence and the accordion
What
more European
yeah.
influence that came together in a fusion of music that we call the Jingping. The
Yeah.
Jingping
What about the
itself,
flute? What about the flute and the mouth organ?
yeah, well, through the years, there were different instruments that played with the Jingping music. It wasn't just those that I mentioned. Now it has really, in a sense, come down to the fore. But from what I've heard and what I've seen before, you had other instruments like the violin, like the guitar, the banjo. All of those were part of that, what you'd probably call the Jingping, band or folk music band. Uh, so and those were used to accompany all the what we now refer to as the Jinping dances. So the ballet is the only folk dance in Dominica that the Jinping music does not accompany. All the other
Tell us
folk
what
dance,
accompanies the ballet and why.
the ballet is really basically the dance is accompanied by one big ballet drum and a group of singers called the Lavoué. Well, the Chantwell is the lead singer, and the lavwe is the chorus of singers that accompany the belly. But in terms of musical instruments, it is really the main instrument is the belly drum, deep sounding belly drum. From more recent times, some groups have used a sort of a steel triangle, which they knock and gives a little bit of a extra percussion. And sometimes you find and one main drummer on that belly drum. But I remember seeing as well another drummer sitting lower down on the same drum and sort of beating on the beating at on the edge of the drum as well to sort of add to the sound of the belly. But essentially, belly is the main feature of the belly is the dance itself, and there's usually two dancers, a man and a woman. Although before different people would dance, they would have like groups. The ballet was more danced like in groups, like on the seaside, by the beach, inside of people's yachts. It was very, and at feast days when they had special feast occasions, ballet would be performed, and then you'd find people would be taking turns and coming in and then it wasn't as structured as it is today. So
And its antecedents of the ballet is, of course, African origin.
Sorry, say it again.
The antecedents, the origins of ballet is, African culture
Yes,
from
for
those who
sure. Yes. That's one of the more vibrant African influences in Dominica. Certainly African retentions.
yes.
In addition to, expressions like the sensi and the costumes and so from Africa. But that was this is one of the very
Yeah.
strong African retentions.
I'm gonna come back to that because we've kind of leapfrogged because we got so much into when you started telling me about your family's role in music, having a piano and so on. We just went from that. We took that road, and it brought us into your later years when you became a cultural officer and then later chief cultural officer. But let's just complete the part where you were giving me the names of your siblings. And then from that, I will go into your education. So when we stopped, the last person you spoke to me about was Remy. So who came after Remy?
So then after Remy, we had Peter and Paul. They were twins. They've both passed on as well. And then you had Rupert, who died as a baby. Then after Rupert, there is Jean. After Jean, there is Tony. We call him Tony. His real name is Anthony Lawrence. After him is Bernadette. After Bernadette is Ursula. She's now Ursula Simon. And then I am the last in the family. Yeah, I'm the last child in the family.
So Raymond, you were saying to me you're the baby boy then? Well,
Yes.
I wouldn't hold that against you. You've done fine.
Jean refers to me sometimes as her baby brother. I said, Jean, I'm not your baby brother.
Anymore. But in Dominican culture, and I'm going to ask you for a moment before we go into before we
But
go
I mean,
into
yeah.
but in our culture in Dominica, there's some people, grown adults and so on, grown people they call baby. You know that, right?
Yes.
They've never gotten away from the fact that they were in that position. But so in conclusion, before we leave your family, would you say, give us a sense of what kind of, I mean, you're a Roman Catholic.
Yes. So very Roman Catholic. My mother was especially, and my parents, very staunch Roman Catholics.
Yes. And you'd go to St. Alphonsus Church or the cathedral in Roseau?
That's right. So I remember I mentioned earlier that when my parents, after they got married, because my mom was from Atkinson, my dad was living in America at the time. And interestingly, they got married in Salibia in the Kalinago territory. Because that was the church. My mother lived in Atkinson, but that was the church she was attending, the church in Salad.
Was your mother partly Kalinago?
There was influence, yes, of some on her father's side.
Yeah.
So
Still
yes.
appealing there, Raymond, because you look at me and so on, but our grandmother on our mother's side was half Kalinago. But the
Oh, okay.
nature of biology is that the Afro-descended persons, the melanin is dominant. So, if you are a dark complected person and you have a child with a Kalina or whatever, the child comes out usually more dark complected. So, but in some of my relatives, you will see the Kalinago influence, but you may not see it in me or Sam. But I was talking to Adinawa Douglas, Rosie Douglas's younger brother, the other day, and he says to me, because there was some controversy over access to the Kalinago territory, something came up in a conversation about having a permit or whatever. And he was saying, if you go back to Dominicans who are not from Russia or China or Haiti, if you go back to any Dominican family that's 100 years old, and at least has a root in Dominica over 100 years, there must be some Kalinago somewhere. Is that your understanding?
Yes, so on my grandfather's side, on my mother's side, um, there was yes, some Kalinago blood, I would say, yes,
Yeah.
in the
And
family.
when we say Kalinago, we mean the people who Columbus met on the island.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
And
And they're,
so after mommy and daddy got married, they moved to Pottersville. So I was going to say now that um, the first set of children were born in Pottersville. I think you asked me that. And they were attending the St. Alphonsus Church. In fact, my mother told me that Wendell, my first brother with the same parents, was the first baby to be baptized in the St. Alphonsus Church.
mm,
That's what she said. So that's why they named him. His middle name is Alphonsus,
mm,
after the St. Alphonsus Church. So he's
amazing.
He was Wendell Alphonsus Lawrence. Yeah.
Mhm. But
And then
when
the
you
rest
move,
of us were born in Roseau, in
yes,
yeah, Central Roseau. Yeah.
yes, yes. And you would say because of your father's work at the shop and his ownership of a soft drink factory or sweet drink factory, and the fact that you had a piano in your parlor, placed the Lawrence family at a certain social strata about what would pass as Dominica's middle class, would you say?
I guess you could, well, yes, I'd already say was as in class as such, but I guess if you want to put it that way, you could.
Yeah,
But
because we're talking about material conditions. Because, I mean, growing up in Dominica, the average person did not have a piano in your home. Am I not right?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, yeah. That the people who
Um,
usually had a piano, that a piano, I have a piano right here looking at that right now. I haven't played much. My daughter played some, but it was usually a mark of arrival at middle class status in Dominica, my childhood. If you had a piano in your home, you're a big shot. To be honest with you.
yeah, I don't know about the big shot because we've never been really rich and well-off people. I wouldn't put that in
Well,
that category
I
at
wouldn't go
all.
as far as to say
Well, I mean,
rich.
I'm just sort of explaining, yeah, that we're
Yes.
not into the well-off and the this and no. We struggle like everybody else, the family, and
Mhm.
because they had a lot of children, there was struggle. There was a lot of
Yes.
struggle
Yes.
through the years. But I have to thank God that we had a piano because I think that helped, first of all, to strengthen the skills of Jean in particular and all of us who played piano.
Mhm.
And she composed all the songs that are popular now, Siffleur Montagne. She composed at that very same piano. Well, we had another piano after that, but at that very same piano. So all of us in the family would be singing those songs that she would be composing. My mother would be helping her as well with some of the translations in Creole.
Mhm.
And but she composed those songs at that very same piano.
Yes.
So it
Was
was
she able to read and write music?
yes, yes. She read music. Remember, she studied the music. Then she went to a university in Ohio. The name is skipping me now. where she did a 1-year program, I think it was. And that program included music as well.
Was she sent there by the government, or she went there of her
Yes,
own
she was
devices?
sent. She was sent. I think the Catholic Church had something to do with it, and I think the government assisted. But I remember the program included music, so she was able to enhance her skills. And then since then, in Antigua, she also went on to do up to grade 8, which is the highest grade I think you can. She also studied music in Antigua as well as, although, as I said, from very young, Jean, to me, was very good at the piano already, even without the training, because she could read her music from the music that she had learned, and she was very good at playing by ear. That's another thing again. Not all musicians can. Some musicians, they must have the score in front of them for them to play, but she can hear a song and play it
Yeah.
just by ear. She's also very good at that as well.
Yes.
I would say just as strong as that. So she thank God she was skilled in both the formal music, using a musical score and musical sheet, and so and just playing by ear, just from her mind, her memory, just playing
Indeed.
music, different songs that she heard on the radio or songs that were popular, and she accompanied people in singing, and she played at the convent. And she played for the Siffleur Montagne. All the albums they have, she was the one playing on the piano to all the music. And then, of course, she had guitarists and so helping her and drummers. But she was the
Yes.
one playing the piano.
Let me
So
ask you, Brother Raymond, because I know, as I said, Siffleur Montagne Chorale and the role that they played. Did you also go to music school? Any of the music schools in Dominica?
no, I went to classes at with Mr. Christian.
Yeah. Who's Mr. Christian? Can you give me his full name?
LM Christian, he had his music class. He was. I went to when they were living at one time at the corner by the bridge close to our home there on Hillsborough Street. Just as
Yes.
you entered Roseau, at
Yes.
one time
Yes.
he was living right there. There was a time he
It,
lived on Kennedy Avenue. They lived
next
on
to the
Kennedy
Arawak
Avenue.
Cinema.
Yes.
Mhm.
And then of course they moved up to Turkey Lane opposite the Anglican Church. But I remember
Yes.
going to, I'm trying to remember which one was first. I remember going to take classes from him at the one by the bridge, and also by the one on Kennedy Avenue,
Yeah. Yeah.
taking classes. So
The
those,
school I first remember, so just for the listening audience, Lemuel McPherson Christian was the son of William Matthew Christian and Beryl Christian of Antigua. His father was a police officer. He was actually born in St. Kitts. His older brother, who was an educator and a minister of education, H.L. Christian, was born in Antigua, but he came to Dominica as children. And my father, Wendell, your brother's namesake, was the first Christian born in Dominica in 1921. And your father had worked in the Panama Canal, and he opened the music school on 1944 with the British Army pay of Wendell Christian. Wendell Christian was his younger brother who lived with him after their mother died. And when he entered the British Army on October 19th, 1943, the Army folk asked, who is your next of kin in the event you die, who, gets whatever benefits and so on. And he gave Lemuel Christian as his next of kin because his father had remarried, his mother had died, and he was really a ward of Lemuel Christian. And they had an orchestra in the 1930s playing violin and mandolin and cello. And when he came back on furlough from the army, he asked, "Where's my money you've been getting?" He says, "Oh, I've used it to start a school." And he didn't mind because it was like he was like his father. And so Lemuel Christian had a music school from 1944, and his son Purcell continued it, and his granddaughter Leanne continues it today. And I'm speaking now to a former student by the name of Raymond Lawrence. Raymond, what was Lemuel Christian like as a music educator?
I thought he was good, very, very strict. He commanded attention, when you went to his his classes. Um,
Did you have to go in your uniform?
No, not necessarily, because I don't remember the exact days I went, but usually it was after school, so you didn't have to have your uniform on a Saturday. Sometimes I remember going on Saturdays. Um, but he knew his stuff, he knew his music. Every time he heard you playing a tune and it was off, he would tell you, although he wasn't seeing the score itself, but you're just listening to it. Um, so yeah, so I quite enjoyed, I must say, the discipline and just learning the music, you know. Unfortunately, I didn't, I ended up not playing a lot. Well, we lost our piano. The first one, we lost in, I think it was Hurricane David. And then the other one just deteriorated after a while, because we did get a second one. But
Yes.
so we didn't really, those of us who were there didn't really maintain. Gina had already left and everything,
Mhm.
keep up the piano part of it. But at least I was happy. It gave me an appreciation of music, appreciation of
Yes,
piano,
yes, yes.
appreciation of music. I mean, I also sang in choirs myself, in
Mhm.
church choir. When I went to Ohio, I was part of the
Stick a
Preparatory
pin in
choir.
that, Raymond, because I think you're going now into your education, and I want to go back to your kindergarten, going through elementary school years. So let's go back a little bit. You're the last boy, as Jean calls you her baby brother or baby. Uh, where did you go to elementary school, if you remember,
I
the earliest
attended the
school?
Convent Prep. Sister Aloysius was the principal at the time. And from kindergarten, I still see a picture of myself and Josephine Giraud on a sort of I'm not sure how you called it, but it was a kind of like a rocking chair that held two seats for kids in kindergarten, um, and right up to grade six, standard six. And then I went on, and I know you mentioned academy a lot, Gabriel, but actually I went to the Dominica Grammar School,
I
and
see.
then and then um, when it after fifth form, I wanted to go to sixth form, but then the subjects I wanted to do, they didn't have it at the grammar school. So they said, if I want to go to sixth form, I have to go to St. Mary's Academy. So that's why I ended up going to St. Mary's Academy.
Okay, that's amazing, Raymond, because
That's
I'm
when,
absolutely. So when did you start at the grammar school then?
so that was 65. Um, I think thereabout.
I see.
And I went to academy 70, 71, and 70, 72 for 2 years in sixth form.
Interesting. So maybe when
So
I
that
remember you, you were actually at the
it,
grammar school, not the academy.
no, in fact, you are still right because remember I went to academy. um,
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right.
yes, for the sixth form academy. So you
That's right.
most likely you remember me at the academy, and that is correct too, because I
Yes. Yes.
did go to
Yes.
the St. Mary's Academy.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
spent 2 years there with an afro, as you mentioned.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
People like Percival Marie, Tim Durant, Arundel Thomas. Yeah, a number of people who I met
Do you
in
remember our
sixth form
brother,
and
the late
academy.
Dr. Wells of Christian? Do you remember him?
Yes, yes. Yeah, one of your brothers, that's right.
Yes. Yes.
And a
Yes. Yes.
number of other students I met in St. Mary's Academy because I was there for
Yes.
2 years. Yeah.
Let me ask you about the grammar school at that time. Were you there at the time of Cecil Goodrich then?
Yes, I was there at the time of Cecil Goodrich.
He was a Barbadian educator who was principal.
And a disciplinarian, right? Very, very strict disciplinarian. But I guess, you need the discipline. You need the
Yes. And what?
discipline for people
Yes.
to.
What were your favorite subjects at the grammar school?
Um, to me, I liked so many subjects, but I liked maths and English and literature and um, French.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I liked biology a lot as well. Geography I liked. to a certain extent. Yeah, but those are some of the subjects. And I remember, not to be boastful or anything, but our fourth form class in the grammar school, when I was in fourth form, was the first set of students. There were about maybe four of us or five of us, I think, that they chose to sit. They call them GCE exams at the time. GCE was strictly fifth form.
Yeah.
Up to that time, it had been strictly fifth form for fifth
Yeah.
formers. Now it's CXC, and that's what it. But then, so in other words, we were like the guinea pigs of the
Yeah.
experimental class, and
Yes.
they tried us with doing O levels in fourth form. That was, I think,
Yes.
the first group from
Yes.
what we remember. Arlington James was one of those students as well. Now,
Yes.
fourth formers are doing, also doing CXC, but I think ours was the first class at the time at the grammar
And
school.
yeah, and in those days, Dominica was a colony of Britain, correct?
Um, that's right, yes, because we
Yes,
became independent in 1978. You're right,
that's right.
yes.
And so the exam was the General Certificate of Education, acronym GCE, with Cambridge University in England, correct?
Yeah, yes, that's right, yes.
Yeah. And
Uh,
then you would take the exam sometime in May. They would send the papers to England, and you'd get the results in September. Is that correct?
yes, that's right. Yes, that's correct.
Let me ask you this: when you moved from the prep, again, I will just tell you, I went to the Roseau Mixed Infant School, then the Rosa Girls School, then the Goodwill Junior High School, where I took the common entrance. The
Hmm.
school that you referred to as a prep, for those who will be listening to this, was attached to the Convent High School on the same road, Bath Road, below the convent. That would be closer to Valley Road. The convent was a little higher up, above
Europe, yes.
that. And in the
And the
time I
convent.
remembered it, it was surrounded by a prickly bush called sweet lime, and
Yes,
the
that's right.
building was a low slung shingled building. It was not the concrete building you have today. Am I right?
Yeah, that's right. Yes, it was a mainly wooden building. Uh, maybe about 6 or 7 different rooms. Because one of them was for the principal,
Yes.
occupied the principal's office, but the others were classrooms. Um, and before that, the kindergarten was where the St. Martin, they call it small primary, St. Martin's small primary, opposite the bishop's house, Bishop's Palace, right at the corner there, opposite the Norman Later, and at the corner. That was where the kindergarten was, I remember. Well, that was, you're talking about kindergarten, but I think from the first standard, we used to call it at the time, um,
Yes.
it was located right in that building that you speak about, where the convent prep is today, but not in the concrete building that they have now, in a wooden
Yes.
structure. Yeah,
Yes.
with
Yes.
about 6 or 7 different classrooms, and those were
Now,
wonderful years, wonderful teachers, wonderful people, wonderful experiences.
stick a pin in that. And the school, both the high school and the elementary school, or the prep, as they call it, the convent prep. Dr. Dave Shillingford in Florida said it was a Montessori model of schooling. The teachers were, or the primary administrators and teachers were, the missionary sisters of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, otherwise known as the ICM sisters from Belgium. Is that correct?
Um, when it comes to that, I'm not exactly I cannot recall the exact name of the order of those sisters who were there at the time, but this could be correct. I
But
just
they were Belgian. They were
remember
not Dominican.
they
They were
were
not Dominican.
Belgian, and then I remember sister, we used to call her Aloysius. Maybe some people may say Aloysius, but we used to say Aloysius. She
Yes.
was the principal
Yes.
of the school at the time. And of course, there were
Indeed.
other nuns who lived in the convent high school and who taught in the actual in the high school itself, Convent
Yes.
High School. Yeah.
And for those people who will be listening to this years in the future, the high school was actually a convent. It was a convent for nuns within which they built the schools, and the nuns were
Yes.
teachers with some locals.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
In the interview with the late Prime Minister Mary Eugenia Charles, her sister Jane uh, was a nun as well and died in London. Are you aware of that?
No.
Yeah, she died of what they call
Mhm.
in those days consumption, but really
Oh,
pneumonia,
okay.
or, well, maybe tuberculosis, what have you. But her father wanted her to be a scientist. Eugenius has told me he felt that nuns, that was for white people to do. He wanted her to go to university, but she started teaching after she left the convent. She taught her sister. So Eugenia Charles was actually taught by her sister, but then she went off to a convent in London and died in London. And when she was at the London School of Economics, she told me that she went to visit her sister's grave. But I do remember the convent prep again was the school of choice for the more eminent families in Roseau. Those were the children who attended. And so you went to grammar school in 65. Were you a cadet at the grammar school?
Yes, for a short period of time.
Yes. Tell
I
us about
was
the
very
Cadet Corps and what the Cadet Corps meant in those days.
well. I think it sort of tried to encourage a level of discipline, civic duty, um, understanding um, your role maybe in more than being more than just a student at school, that there were other roles that you could play. And one of them could be part of a cadet corps, to be part of various official occasions of the school and of official national occasions that we took part in. Um, yeah, and
Did
also,
you ever go on parade, Raymond?
yes, I think I remember going on one or two parades at the gardens, especially around well, it wasn't Independence at the time, but the National Day celebrations, doing some things. Um, yeah. But I didn't remain long with the cadets for some
Mhm.
reason. I didn't
Yes,
stay
yes.
too long with them, though.
Who was your commanding officer at the time? Was it Arthur James?
Arthur James, yes.
Yes, 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 yes.
And
Okay.
Arthur James also taught me as well mathematics. He
Okay.
taught mathematics at the grammar school. I remember him being my mathematics teacher.
So he was your math teacher in the day or in the morning, and in the afternoon, he was your cadet commandant.
Yeah.
That was the same with
Yes.
me. I started at the grammar school in 72, and one of my commandants or commanders was Alan Paul. He taught me math in the morning, and in the afternoon on the Thursday, he was an under officer, then a lieutenant. Alan
Yeah.
Paul. Yes, yes. So you're saying that the Cadet Corps was a sort of civic leadership, discipline, and value engineering entity. Did you think it was a useful organization to have at that time and still?
At the time, I mean, I cannot say maybe it was a passion of mine or, like how I love the arts, you know.
Yes.
No, it certainly wasn't a passion for me like the arts, no. But
Mhm.
I just thought it was, another beneficial experience for young people, gave you a sense of, and also for socializing. You
Yes.
made friends among the cadets, people that were not necessarily in your class, but you met them at the and socialized as well. So that too, along with
And
because I did a lot of athletics and I did basketball as well, a lot of
I see.
basketball,
Mhm.
along with the sports. Um, but it was more and secondary schools drama society along with that, and I was in the arts at Convent Prep and in secondary school, doing a lot of acting, especially.
Mhm.
So all of those, I think, helped to broaden my uh, development and
Yeah.
educational experience as well. It just wasn't just all academics, but
Yes.
all of those, I think, played a part in helping to encourage balance in my life. You know, apart from academics, she took part in different uh, educational activities as well.
Raymond, we've not moved into the independence period yet, but I want to just wrap up that period before independence. You're at the grammar school, started in 65, but there's a carnival fire of 63, which in Dominican history is a big thing. That's when, on that fateful day, February 25th, I believe, 1963, there's an explosion at the back of the Mexican band, and it consumed um, three of the Sensi-clad um, carnival participants who were in Sensei. Eric Shillingford, George James, and Eddie Mate. Eddie Mate died pretty much that same day, and Eric Shillingford and George James died at University Hospital, Mona, Jamaica. The three other persons who were in Bag Sensei, Edward Green and Lavity Emmanuel Lavity Greenaway, survived. And many people say it's because Sensei, that is the rope costume, was much more flammable than the bag costume. The costume was made out of crocker's bag. Were you at the scene of the fire?
No, I was not at the scene of the fire, and I mean, I thank God for that. None of us, I would say family members, were at the scene of the fire at the time, but we were in town. We were in Roseau, downtown. I remember walking by um, the corner of Great Marlborough and Great George Street. Paris Williams had a store at that. I think they lived upstairs, and he had a store downstairs at the time before he had opened up the big cement factory at Cadenfield. Um, I remember walking, then I think I was walking home at the time. And then I heard the commotion, and then I heard people talking about it, but instead of going to the fire to see what was going on, I went home. I went straight to my home. I
You would have
didn't
been
want,
about 9, 10 at that time?
yeah, 63, 9 years
Yes.
old. And I remember all of us coming home, and my mother was checking to see she was checking to see if all of us were there and
Yes.
accounted for, so to speak. Thank God all of us were there and accounted for. None of us were at the scene of the fire.
Yeah.
But
But
it was a very tragic incident. And from interviews I heard recently there with Rupert Lance and a lady from Newtown who actually got burnt.
mhm,
The fire was to me not an ordinary fire
yes.
from the recollections of Lance and the lady.
Mhm,
That's a very, very mysterious, up to today, a
yes.
very mysterious fire. That's the only way I can put it, because
Yes.
that wasn't an ordinary fire.
Yes. 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 Our
So
father was in charge of the brigade on that fateful day, and there's a very chilling story he tells. Arthur Mate's father had been his sergeant in the British Army, so he knew the family well. The fire station, as you know, is across from Boards Avenue area. And George James and Eric Shillingford, accompanied by Arthur Mate's oldest brother, Eddie Mate, are going by the fire station to go get their sensei at Gujiro's home, which is where Eric lives with Eric's mother lived there with her husband. Eric had gotten married and lived, I believe, somewhere in Goodwill. And there's a fireman from Castle Bruce called Wilshire who's playing the guitar. And Eddie Mate grabs the guitar and says, "Man, give me that guitar. You can't play. I'll play you a song that you'll hold for a long time." And that song is the old Creole carnival song that goes like this. And I can't sing as good as you, Raymond. I'm going to try. Solomon Wule, Sinu Monu Monane Sala, Sinu Monu Monane Sala, Nane Sala Se Denye Nane No. And the English translation of that song is "Roll, Solomon, roll.
mhm.
Roll, Solomon, roll.
If we die, we die this year.
If we die, we die this year. This year is our final year."
Yeah.
And he goes away after playing the song. And about half an hour or so later, the phone rings at the fire headquarters, fire on King George V Street. And when they get there, one of the firemen recognizes the burnt body of Eddie and recognizes that's Eddie Martin who has just played that song for them. And that's in our book, Death by Fire by Andre and Christian.
Yes,
But
which I have read as well. Yes.
well, what do you think of that work? Is it a work that is worthy?
Wonderful. Yeah, wonderful. Even that book was an eye opener as well, because it's almost like every year, every month after that fire, you were getting a new revelation, a new piece of information,
Yes, yes.
some mysterious thing, clue, mysterious occurrence, reports. That person, you hear that report, then you hear another report, and yeah, and
No,
that thing.
someone called the law firm a year ago from Canada in the 80s, and they said they want to speak with me because there are things that they know, that they feel they're about getting to that place of the grave. So it's like the John F. Kennedy assassination in the United States. Every year brings something new as people get ready to check out. They want to speak, and I'm happy to know that there have been interviews with Rupert Lance, and the young lady from Newton and the others. People like Vivian Webb, the welder. Vivian Webb was also burnt.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yes.
So let me ask you this. So you're not at the fire, but how did that change Carnival in Dominica, if you can recall?
What I recall, and I mean, I was 9 years old at the time, but first of all, that was such a terrible occurrence. That thing shocked and everybody. And I remember very soon after there were the funerals, and it just sort of impacted the lives of all Dominicans and carnival goers and everything. And it was a sad occasion as well. I remember the following carnival was really had been reduced to just a shadow of what carnival used to be. So it was very, very low key. I mean, people participated, but you could see it just wasn't one of our normal, usual, very vibrant and colorful and exciting carnivals.
There are
But
people
we
who
still,
said to me, Raymond, that they never went into the carnival again. One of those persons would be
again, yes,
Raymond Lawrence.
I have heard, yes, people who've said they never went back into carnival again after that. Some people just lost the taste for the carnival after that. It was such a horrible experience and memory. Yeah, but it took years, a couple of years again, before the carnival started to revive and be rejuvenated and become what it used to be. And then, of course, as you would know, the sensei was banned for something like 33 years, I think, until 1995.
Yes.
Southwell played a key part in trying to help to restore. He was chairman of the Carnival Committee at the time. And of course, we were advocating in cultural division for the return, so to speak, or an end to the ban on Sensei, which happened in the mid 90s. So we now have Sensei back and always had the other traditional costumes like your susra sui, your darkies, and babwa, and so on.
And Raymond, let me ask you this. What is the role of carnival well, let me back off. Give me a sense of the carnival as you remembered it as a child and compare it to the carnival of the 2000s. Give us a sense of the
Um,
floats, for instance, because something I think that has died out is the floats. There were floats. That is
well,
not just personal costumes, one on the body, but on trucks. There were, like, I remember Moby Dick. I remember flying saucers. I remember Spartacus. Tell us about that.
right. So, well, you remember a lot of those stuff. Carnival, what I remember, especially the Carnival weekend itself, talking about Carnival Sunday, the Monday, the Tuesday, those 3 days were, to me, much, much more vibrant in a way, in one sense. So, in other words, there has been a lot of growth and change and evolution, and at the same time, and highlights in today's carnival as well. But the carnival that we knew before also had very positive highlights and things that you you remember very well. Carnival Sunday was huge. And
Yes.
with that one we've lost for sure. We've
I
lost
mean,
it
we
because
would dress Raymond in our church clothes or Sunday best, and we'd go out and stand on the side of the road and you'd see the floats.
yes, and then you go to the Windsor Park. That's where
Yes.
the floats came in. And then you had a taste of some of the bands that were coming out on Monday and Tuesday. You'd have smaller sections. And the floats were although the money was not as maybe as much as today, but boy, I tell you, those floats were very well done. You didn't even see the wheels of the truck. You couldn't see the driver. The entire truck was covered. And then you had your carnival players on the float. The designs were beautiful and spectacular. And then there was a stage built. The floats would go around. People would sit on the stands or standing as well and watching the parade.
Stick a pin in that, Raymond. The stands were built by the inmates at Her Majesty's prison at Stock Farm. They were prefab. They would come down from the prison under the direction of a warder, and they would assemble what do you call it, the stands. And then after the carnival, they would disassemble the stands. Is that correct?
Well, what I remember, the stands were there were some permanent stands. They
There were
probably
permanent
were
stands on the Bath Road side, but there were other stands that were built for carnival only.
for carnival, yes, because I remember there were permanent stands because, of course, Windsor Park was a place of football and cricket and all of that, and then there were always stands there for the
Mhm.
public. So that
Yes.
was part of incorporated into the part of Carnival City. But they had additional stands now for your
Yes.
shows, your Queen show. Eventually, when it moved from Carib Cinema to Windsor Park, that's the Calypso show and the Queen show. They would mount this stage as well in the middle of which would be there on Carnival Sunday, and then there would be
Mhm.
some displays on the stage, and the queens and so would come out on stage as well in their
Yes.
evening gowns on a Sunday afternoon. So
Yes.
a lot of large crowds, beautiful floats and bands, sections of bands and beautiful displays. After that, there was still another parade in Roseau, and by that time it was starting to get a little dark towards 6 o'clock. And then you have the queens and so on would go on a float, and then you'd have all the floats that were, the business floats, the original, what we call original band floats, original ideas, and so parade through Roseau on Carnival Sunday afternoon. Then
Let
Carnival
me ask you
Monday.
to stick. I'm sorry. I was
Uh-huh.
just going to say that Emmanuel Greenaway, love it, he said, they actually built a float made of cardboard atop a Land Rover Jeep with a bamboo as the cannon for a tank. And the person driving the tank was Julian Giraud, wearing the helmet of his brother Eric, who brought it from England because Eric rode a motorcycle. And they were dressed as US soldiers at Normandy. So they had a tank built on top of a Land Rover Jeep, and they would explode the cannon, in Dominica, the bamboo is sometimes used to make a cannon. They put kerosene and some salt and they blow into it and it makes like a cannon. And then, there's a lot of papier mache. There was a float called Birds in the Belfry or Belfry, where a Peace Corps volunteer taught the students at the Roseau Boys School papier mache. And they made that, and they also made Moby Dick, which was a big, whale, and Ahab or whatever, people trying to harpoon the whale. So there was a lot of pageantry that I think has been lost. Comment on that, please.
Yes, for sure. We don't, as I said, we lost that, spectacular float display and maybe original, I probably want to say original costume displays as well. Because as I mentioned, today's carnival and past carnivals have their strengths and their weaknesses. So maybe one of the weaknesses of present day carnival is we've got into the bath suit and feathers and beads, and we're almost like stuck in terms of bands with that concept of the bath
You can
suits.
only have so many
And
feathers and beads, Raymond.
yes, so we got stuck in, and while it's pretty and all of that and popular, not just in Dominica, all over the Caribbean, every carnival now is beads and feathers and bath suits. Well, we, in a way, we've got stuck in. So, in other words, our creativity and the originality that we had before, I think we've lost a lot of that as well.
Stick a pin on
Um,
the originality and creativity because stuck is the word because that came from Brazil and Trinidad. You know, the scant cladding, some now just do paint on the human body. There's no clothing, so there's nothing left to the imagination. Is it possible for us to see a return to that originality and creativity where we can build floats that represent different aspects of our culture, different aspects of our history? The farmer on his farm, the small factory, the mountains, the birds in the belfry or the birds in the forest that will give a young person who's creative, who is artistic, the opportunity to go beyond the beads and the peacock feathers.
yeah, I think so. And I think, I encouragement has to be given to new ideas, new ways of coming up with creative ideas for costumes, for floats. You name it. Prizes could be given for real original ideas now because the ideas for the bands, as I mentioned, the bath suit feathers is not really original anymore. We've had that now for about 10 to 15 years, and it's not changing. It's we we're bringing out almost the same costumes, just changing the colors or changing the beads or but so we have to try to get back into designing all types of different costumes, all types. Let open up creativity again in Dominica in terms of ideas and designs, and so that's what the Carnival of before I think had. So on Carnival Monday, band display in the mornings, which we don't have anymore. You had your big parade on a Monday morning with the queens and all the costume bands, together with the traditional, the sensei, the pie fig, the rope senseis, the cloth senseis, the Siffleur suite. A lot of groups coming from the country areas to join, and it was a massive, massive, massive display on Carnival Monday, and also on Carnival Tuesday when you had smaller groups, very colorful, very creative in their ideas and displays, but smaller groups. And then those of the Monday who wanted to come back in their costumes, and those groups, we used to call them gangs at the time, dressed in the same costume, smaller groups. And it really would be a climax, a culmination, a last lap of Carnival on the Carnival Tuesday. So Carnival Tuesday was also very, very, very big. But of course, I think maybe 10 years ago, maybe between them, there was a change of Carnival where they took what was on the Monday, they put it on the Tuesday. They took what was on the Tuesday, they put it on the Monday. I had cautioned them about it. I had told them that if they do that, then Monday would begin to suffer. Carnival Monday would not be the same. And Carnival Tuesday would be a highlight as you because of the costumes and so on. But the two strong, powerful days we had before, one day would be stronger, the other would be weaker. That's exactly what has happened. So on Carnival Monday now, after the Juve, there's not much to see anymore from 10 o'clock in the morning to or maybe around 5 or 6 in the evening. Not much at all happening in
Yes.
Roseau. So
Yes.
that is a huge difference to what we had before.
Yes.
And then on Monday evening, now in today's carnival, you have the t-shirts coming out in the evenings, and then on the Tuesday you have the. So you asked me to compare. So in other words, what I would say is the today's carnival has its strengths, as I said earlier, and weaknesses. I mentioned the Carnival Monday. We've lost some of what we had on a lot of what we had on Carnival Sunday, and instead of Monday and Tuesday, both days being strong, with Monday has become much weaker, very weak, and Tuesday Carnival is, spectacular. Whereas before, Carnival Sunday was strong and powerful and spectacular. Carnival Monday was strong, powerful, and spectacular. And
Yeah.
so was Carnival Tuesday. So I have very fun. I mean, I do enjoy watching Carnival now and listening to the music and so, but I've seen that we have lost some things we had before, and I wish maybe they could be revived. There's nothing wrong in reviving some of the traditions that worked very well during the Carnival. Nothing wrong in trying to encourage people to diversify in terms of costumes rather than sticking to one type of costume,
Yeah.
offering encouragement to diversify and have more
A revival of the floats, maybe?
a revival of the floats, more creativity in the costumes, and think because they may not want to change the Carnival Monday and Tuesday and bring it back like how it was before. But Carnival Monday needs to be addressed, especially between 10 in the morning and let's say 6 in the evening. That whole day needs something has to happen to revive Carnival Monday again. That is lacking.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
What I'm
But
going to
I
do
mean, in
is,
terms of your your participation, you see some bands jumping up. I mean, in terms of jump up, you see hundreds, maybe thousands of people jumping behind a band and so on. Another thing is maybe we're not hearing enough calypso on the road as well. A lot of it is bouillon is Mark, it's popular, it's nice jump up music and everything. But a space has to be made
yes.
for more calypso, not that calypso is, but a lot more calypso. So whether the DFC or whether the Calypso Association has to have trucks and trucks, music trucks that are dedicated to just playing calypso music, and that would give the
Not only that,
balance. It would give the balance between the calypso and the bouillon during the carnival.
yeah, the societies that work best, in my view, from my observation, is the societies that are planned and are intentional. Whatever one may think of China and its system, they were very intentional. When you and I grew up, the Chinese rode around on bicycles and they had one suit of clothing. Well, what they were doing was they were focusing on science, technology, art, culture, all those things. And then there was the explosion that we see today. It didn't happen overnight. It was very much a product of planning. So what I'm thinking is, and I'm going to come to the cultural division, how the cultural division came to be and what your view of culture is. We have to be intentional. That is, if we want certain things to happen, it has to be not simply a product of chaos, but a product of planning. As you say, dedicating certain elements to floats, certain elements to Creole music, certain elements to calypso music. So that way, if it's going to be judged, you have different categories, right? It's not just a mélange or just a sort of, you know, incomprehensible, twisted knot. Let it be that you can judge the carnival on a continuum based on different segments. You've got the float, you've got the personal costumes, you've got the calypso, you've got the Creole music, you've got the bouillon, because it's not all of one thing or the other. It is a variety. And even in nature, variety brings resilience, strength, and creativity. Let me ask you a few questions about your education. You got out of the grammar school, went to the St. Mary's Academy. What did you do after that as far as any post-secondary education?
Well, in terms of post-secondary, I kind of went to university, I would say maybe a bit late, and that was because when I left St. Mary's Academy, sixth form, I was planning to go to study at UWI, and I think I was thinking of becoming a teacher, and I
Mhm.
wanted to go to study at one of the UWI campuses.
And
But
that's
then,
University of the West Indies, UWI.
yes, and I recall applying
I,
to one of them or to UWI. But in that summer, that sort of brought sort of a new influence in my life. I will remember I said to myself I would like to work during the summertime, summer vacation. Well, I mean, I was through with school, but I wanted to work or prepare myself. So I was trying to think of where I could get a job, and I couldn't think of anywhere. I think I tried a couple of places, but then I called the radio station. I'm not sure what made me decide to call the radio station. But anyway, God, in his all-knowing nature, I called Jeff Charles. He was manager of DBS. Well, it was Radio Dominica at the time. In fact, Radio Dominica had officially just opened the year before, 1971. I left school in 1972 in May. And so I was calling maybe about June. And Mr. Charles at the time, who was manager, said, well, Raymond, we don't really have any particular job as such. But if you want to go around collecting news and compiling the news and putting the news together and so on, that. So I said, sure, anything. I just would like to have it. I was more thinking of a summer vacation job at the time. I didn't have broadcasting or culture at the time on my mind as careers, really. I don't think in those days people had, as such, had broadcasting and culture. But anyway, so I started working and going around for news, collecting news, and so on. And then gradually, he listened to, they recorded me, and they started. They allowed me to start presenting the news on the radio. So that was in 1972. And then I fell in love with the radio. That's what happened. I mean, a career I never thought about before.
So how long were you in broadcasting, Raymond?
Well, officially 10 years, but of course, after that, I still did programs. Even if I was in cultural television, I still did radio programs and read news and so.
So that was from 72 to 70 to 82?
To 82, that's right, yes. So 10 years. So I was at DBS, well, it was Radio Dominica at the time, for like 6 years. And then I got a job with Radio Antilles, which again, I didn't apply for. Radio Antilles at the time was listening to, unbeknownst to me, listening to the other radio stations in the Caribbean. And when they heard voices that they liked, I'm assuming, when they heard voices that they liked, no matter where, Grenada, St. Vincent, Trinidad, Dominica, they would call the person and ask if the person would be interested in work. So that's what happened in my case.
So you left Dominica?
Yes. They called and asked me if I wanted to work with Radio Antilles, and I told them, sure, it was a wonderful opportunity. The salary was more, everything was more. And I left in 70, at the end of 78 was when I started at Radio Antilles, and I stayed almost 4 years in Montserrat. Also I formed the Montserrat Dance Theatre in Montserrat as well. I was director of that company there for 4 years, apart from working at Radio Antilles. But I would still come to Dominica on vacations and can still continue my work with Waita Kubuli here. So I never really left Waita Kubuli as such. And I had an assistant.
How do you spell Waita Kubuli?
WAITUKUBULI. And
you formed that dance group in what year?
So that was 1971. So that was way before, well, not way before, but I was thinking of Radio Antilles. But 1971 I was still at school. In fact, I was at St. Mary's Academy, because I left St. Mary's Academy in 1972, and I was 17 years old when a group of us decided, let's form. We didn't really start as a dance group as such, but dance was part of it. Because before that, I had been part of a dance group, Downtown Dancers with Claudia Joseph. Pearl Christian as well was part of that group. And Claudia Joseph had traveled there was a huge cultural expo in Grenada, 1969. And then she asked me to be part of a group she had. She needed 4 boys and 4 girls for the folk dances of Dominica. And she was missing a boy. So she came to my home. I had never danced before. I was more into acting and singing and other artistic expressions, but not
Take a
dancing.
pin in that, Raymond. Where were you acting and singing before Whitey Kabuli or
In
Downtown
um
Dancers?
in Convent Prep, I did a lot of singing and a lot of acting because you know, remember they had end of year concerts and a lot of they call them recitations. You recite poems and so on as part of speech days and that kind of thing. And
Was that at St.
no,
Gerard's Hall?
it's Sandra as well. That's right. Yes. And then it was more and acting, but it was more when I reached secondary school, grammar school, maybe when I was about 11. I joined the secondary school's drama society, and we did a number of plays, directed, some of them directed by Amma Harris, who died recently. She's another one sometimes we don't mention enough, you know, in Dominica. I would want to say that Amma needs some recognition, a lot of recognition, a lot more recognition. I know she's just passed, but Amma, before she left Dominica, did years of directing in drama, and she was able to influence and strengthen and stage a number of dramatic productions. Um,
Yes.
but anyway, some of the plays
So
we
for
did
those
in
persons
secondary.
who do not know, Amma Harris, who died in July of last year, July 9th, 2025, was a Dominica-born dramatist and pioneering force in Black theater, education, and culture in Canada. After studying at the Banff Institute of Fine Arts in 1970, she moved to Canada, becoming a renowned director, producer, and anti-racist advocate in Toronto. I had the high
Yeah,
honor and privilege of meeting her in 2023. Didn't know she had so little time left.
yes.
2022, actually.
So
Yes.
I was doing a lot of acting and I mentioned singing, but then when Claudia Joseph is the one, when I was 15, 2 years before I started White Kubuli, she asked me to join to travel. This specific purpose was to travel to Grenada as part of the Dominica cultural delegation. So at 15, I traveled with them, performed with them in Grenada, and then when we came back, I was part of her group, the Downtown Dancers, together with Pearl Christian. We traveled to Antigua as well to perform as part of Carnival and performed at different shows here in Dominica. But then that group
Amazing.
sort of started to fall apart, and that was around the time that the group of us decided to form a youth group with more focusing on the arts, dance, drama, and other things like debates and discussions and so on. Eventually, the dance became a lot more popular. That's how, and so White Gobuli started in January 1971. But
And
we
who were
also
the
did
founding
other things.
members with you?
We had Gwyneth Joseph, Regina Walsh. She is now Jacqueline James. There was Arlington James as well, Bennett Maslin, Daphne, or Glenda Richards, married to Francis Richards. So those were some of the people. The first thing we did was a carnival band, as a matter of fact. Journey to the Center of the Earth in 19 Carnival 1970. So as soon as we were formed in January. We planned the carnival band for carnival, which probably was around. So maybe we had about a month to do the band. When I think of it, I said, how did we do something like that? But anyway, and we got, I think we came second. I got king of the bands and, you know, whatever. And then in
Journey
the,
to the Center of the Earth.
of
That's an
the earth,
interesting band.
yes.
Uh,
And then,
Wait, was it a
in,
costume band or?
yes, big costume band, yes. And then in May, we had what we call a May Panorama. It was like a variety concert, but we also had a May Queen contest within the show. And then I think we traveled to Antigua that very first year as well with the dance to take part in Carnival. And the following year, we went back to Antigua. Very early years, we were traveling quite a bit. Went to St. Croix. They asked us to perform in St. Croix, St. Thomas. We used to do shows at the Fort Young Hotel, very, very popular, very well attended, huge crowd. Afterwards, after the show itself, we would have a dance with singing stars. Those shows were very, very successful in those years at the Fort Young Hotel. And then later in the 70s, we moved to, when I say move, we started to have shows at the St. Gerard's Hall after the Fort Young shows. And then I went to Radio Antilles. And then when I came back, by that time, the Arawak was up and running, and we started our shows at Arawak from 1982. So in a sense, Arawak has been a kind of headquarters for our group, other groups as well. But for us, every show for many years, maybe 30 years, we did shows at Arawak
Yeah.
from
And when you say
19,
Arawak, you mean the former Arawak Cinema,
yes,
which is
1982.
now the
It was
Arawak House of Culture.
House of Cards. I remember when it was a cinema. I used to go to cinema to watch movies there too. There was Carib cinema and there was Arawak cinema.
Yeah. Stick a pin in
But
that, Raymond. Tell me the role that cinema played in your early years. And what were the movies that you remember?
whoa. Yeah, well, I mean, cinema was always fascinating, not just to me, all Dominicans, people all over the world. You love the various movies, the stories, the acting, the directing, they were very entertaining, very captivating.
Stick a
And
point in there, stick a pin in there, Raymond. Wouldn't you say that in your time in the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, that cinema was maybe one of the most powerful regular, when I say regular, remember, Carnival was just one part of the year, January, February. Christmas was another part of the year, November, December. You had the summer. But cinema was all through the year. Tell the listener how profound, how powerful it was to go to the Carib cinema and see trucks lined up from the countryside and people going into pit rushing. People may not know what rushing means. Explain that.
well, the pit entrance was on Kings Lane there, and there was just one, entrance. Is a concrete entrance, no real door, just an entrance. Um, and to get into that small entrance, you had to rush, as you said, or fight your way into. I'm not necessarily fight, but push your way into getting to that entrance to get in. I remember rushing myself a number of times to get into the pit section, but the cinema itself had pits. There was house, which was a higher level, and then there was balcony, which was another higher level again. And of
And
course,
there was box, Raymond.
four box as well, yes. And each level was more expensive, so pit
Yes.
was the cheapest and so on. But you were just enthralled and captivated by the movies, and after that was big screen. So I mean, TVs, good new invention. We use TV a lot and very convenient and so. But watching a movie on a big screen too. I mean, we still have cinemas, so it's not that cinema is no
Is there
longer.
cinema? What is the cinema culture now compared to Dominica
But
in its heyday?
but of course, cinema is not maybe as big as we have. So cinema is back in Dominica with the cinema we have now. But the kind of crowds, because remember we didn't have TV at the time, all these other technological developments. We didn't have computers, we didn't have cell phones and all of that. So one of the forms of entertainment, people like sports a lot in Dominica too, football and cricket, and so they would go to those in large crowds. But oh boy, the movies were always very, very well supported. I think Carib Cinema was open before the Arawak Cinema, but Arawak Cinema was also there. So
Yes.
the two cinemas, you had a choice between which cinema you want to go to. I remember
Carib was open in the 50s and Arawak was open in 69. I remember when Arawak was opened.
60s. Yeah, that's right. So, and I remember going to attending the both of them more or less on a regular, more kind of regular. When I say regular, once or twice a month, or twice, 3 times, 3 or 4 times a month, whatever.
Yeah.
But I always loved the cinema. Always, always loved the cinema very, very
What was the
much.
most famous movie you remember seeing on Dominica in your childhood?
Well, maybe Ten Commandments.
Yes.
Um, Ten Commandments, and then you had others like the Ben Hur, and the Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, the Cleopatra, you know, there were some horror movies as well, the Frankenstein and the Dracula and all
Yes,
that.
yes, yes, yes.
Um, and musicals, lovely
Yes.
musicals as well.
Sound of
So
Music.
singing, yes, Sound of Music, and so. Yeah, it was really. And then now with the Arawak hurricane, remember Hurricane David happened in 1979. So it sort of practically destroyed or didn't destroy the building, but it certainly put Arawak out of commission. And I remember Dermot Southwell at the time working with Prime Minister at the time, that was Eugenia Charles, um, the government, Eugenia Charles, purchasing the building Arawak and converting it into a culture, which I thought was a very forward thinking, broad thinking, a move to help to promote and push cultural development. That was a wonderful initiative and undertaking, because Arawak really served as a center, as a hub for cultural activity in Dominica. And if you wanted to perform at a proper theater, um, you had the opportunity to do that with Arawak. Of course, there was Abbey Cinema that you could still do shows at. And in Grand Bay, you had, at the time, Matutu's Park, which had a nice stage as well, open air and so. But Arawak, in a sense, had all the facilities, the stage, the lights, the sound, the chairs, everything was there, the sound system and so on, backstage, and all the facilities were there. So if you had to, and that's the advantage. I remember writing an article recently there on the importance and urgency of the need for Arawak. And up to now, since Hurricane Maria, and this year will be what, maybe 9 years?
9 years, yeah.
9 years that we have not had Arawak, and that is very, very sad. It's a very sad thing.
So we don't have a
Also,
national house of culture where you can have plays and so forth.
we don't have a proper theater. Let's put it in Dominica right now. We just had one proper theater, which was Arawak. So in a sense, we don't have not one proper theater right now. I mean, there are other options, other optional. Now you have St. Gerard's Hall that the Catholic Church has made available now for concerts. Um, and then you have some school auditoriums, which are not really ideal, but you don't have much of a choice. The Goodwill Primary School auditorium, for instance. The stadium, but you'd have to put up stuff for the stadium, structures and so to have a shows there. But if you want a proper indoor performance or performance in a real theater space, then we don't have it right now. I'm hoping the government will give it some priority, attention, and try to get Arawak back operational sooner rather than later, because there is a
Indeed.
great need, an urgent need for the Arawak for the furtherance and promotion and strengthening of culture in Dominica.
Okay, so Raymond, I'm going to ask you a few other things as we come to the end. I will say that you took us to Radio Dominica, the legendary Jeff Charles, who I tried to interview recently, but he's not doing too well. So that's not possible, unfortunately. And then you went to Radio Antilles in Montserrat until 82. Then you went to university after that. And where did you go?
Yes, so then, well, at 82, that's when I returned to Dominica, because at the time there was a change of government, and the government of Eugenia Charles and them came into power, and they were asking Dominicans who lived overseas, who were working professionals, come back to Dominica to assist because Dominica was being rebuilt after Hurricane David. So then I agreed to come back. They wanted me to go back to the radio station, but I told them I wanted a change. And at the time, Cultural Division had just been set up in 1978 with Alwyn. And then Pearl Christian joined him in
And that's the late, great Alwyn Bully who designed the Dominica flag.
Right, that's right. And then, so he was alone, the first chief cultural officer by himself from 78 to 81 when Pearl Christian joined him. And then I joined, so the cultural division had literally just been set up, basically. So it was Alwyn and Pearl in 1982 when I was asked to return to Dominica. And then I opted to join the cultural division because all from my childhood, I was involved in the arts. So even if I wasn't broadcasting full time, I was still involved in the arts. And I asked to work there. So I joined them in 1982. Then by 1984, the ministry, well, through culture, asked me to do, and I wanted to do it as well, a certificate in management. And at UWI, Mona, it was just a one-year certificate, 1984 to 1985. Then I left again in 87 to 1990. I went to the University of Steubenville in Ohio to do my bachelor's degree.
What's that University of?
University of Steubenville.
Spell that, please.
Steubenville. It's a Catholic university, yes, but it offers all various programs. So I did mine in focusing on radio and television. But of course, I did a number of courses related to arts and culture. So that was from 87 to 90, 3 years. Returned to Dominica, every time returning to my job, to the cultural division. And then from 1995 to 1997, I went to the University of North Texas in Denton, Texas. And that's where I did my master's in communication and culture. I wanted to bridge the gap, because I was involved in both communication and culture.
That's an MS or an MA?
It's an MS. I wanted to bridge the gap, so to speak, for myself, between broadcasting, communication, and culture at the same time. Because through the years, I had always felt that, in fact, radio, especially radio, because I worked a lot in radio, I worked in television as well, but radio and television have a very vital cultural role to play. We just see it maybe as radio and TV, but they carry movies, they carry dramatic presentations, they carry a lot of music, they do documentaries, the media are very cultural elements that can be used to promote, so I did the master's in communications and culture. That's at the University of North Texas
in Denton. So you've got is it a BA that you have from Steubenville or is it a BS?
Yes, it's a BA, yes.
Okay, so you have a BA in radio and television from Steubenville. That's between 1987 and 1990. And you have an MS in communication and culture from University of North Texas at Denton.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. Yeah. So now, all that why, since I got back in 82, I never left even if I was going overseas to study, but I was getting study leave. So the first thing was the certificate of management at UWI, then the Bachelor of Arts, and then the master's. Quite apart from, attending little courses here and there, training here and there, and so on. Okay. But when I came back, when I went to University of Steubenville, and I came back in 1990, that was when they asked me to head the cultural department. So I became the head of culture in 1990.
Okay,
Until I,
so by that time, Alwyn had gone to Jamaica, to UNESCO.
and Alwyn and I left in 1987 when I was going to University of Steubenville. That was the same year that Alwyn went to Jamaica to take up the job with UNESCO. So
I
both
see.
of us left that very same year, and I think around the same time as well. Um, and I remember
So
feeling
when you left, Pearl remained as, I guess, acting chief cultural officer. Is that how
at
it
the
worked?
time, yes. And then and when we were out, they brought in people like Lennox and the church. I think he stayed there for 6 months. And Ophelia was in asked to. Edith Bellot Allen also played a role with culture as well, working
And when you say
alongside
Ophelia, you mean Ophelia Olivache, Dominica's Lady of Sound.
Yes, yes. So those people worked there while I was, and Alwyn had gone to Jamaica, or I think Alwyn stayed for 20 years in Jamaica.
Mhm.
Um, and I stayed until 2014 when I retired the first time.
Mhm.
And
And when you retired as chief cultural officer.
yes,
What was Pearl
and
Christian at that time then?
she was senior cultural officer.
Okay.
And then they called me back in 2017, that's the year of the hurricane, in May of 2017, and I returned to the Cultural Division as Chief Cultural Officer again and stayed another 4 years. So that period of time was extremely challenging for me because I had to deal with the hurricane impact of Maria, and I also had to deal with COVID impact as well. So it was trying to navigate and manage and handle and different approaches to everything and rebuilding after the hurricane and so on. So, but thank God anyway, I was able to make it and do training with the staff as well. That were, in fact, St. Matthew, who's now Chief Cultural Officer, was there at the time. He had joined a couple of years before. So I was able to conduct training for them, a lot of training, especially after the hurricane, because we couldn't do much getting around, it was difficult. So I focused on, that was one of the things I focused on, was training for staff as well. And of course, rebuilding took a lot. Old Mill
Now,
had
let me
been
ask you this, Raymond. At
damaged.
that time, your headquarters was at the Cultural Center at Old Mill at Canefield.
You mean recently? Well, I mean from 85, yes.
Yes.
Because
That's where the
remember,
headquarters has been.
yes, because when I came back in 82 to join Alwyn and Pearl, the office was opposite the fire station, a little lower down from
Yes.
the fire station on Bath Road. And then we moved to where the Sun newspaper is. That's on Independence Street upstairs. We moved to there while the old mill was being rehabilitated. So the old mill had been used in the 70s. I remember being part of that as well by the Arts Council at the time, and shows were being, now and then it wasn't headquarters for culture yet, but the space was so conducive and to arts and culture that a couple of things were being held there. But officially, it opened as a cultural center in 1985. So
Yeah.
that's
Whose
when we
idea was it to make it the cultural center?
I would think Alwyn, because
Yeah.
remember Alwyn was there from 78 and we opened up in 85. So that time he had recommended and the funds were provided and the rehabilitation was taking place. And because of course all the structures and so as you know were there. It was simply a matter of,
Yeah. And it was an old sugar
rehabilitating.
plantation mill, actually.
That's right, yes.
So in a
So
way,
we
it
were
kind of incorporated the historical basis for the island's existence, which was the sugar industry.
yes. So it had that industrial, it had an archaeological history, it had a very strong cultural and heritage, and then it had slave history as well. The slaves were working in the old mill as well in the sugar plantation there.
As a matter
And
of fact, Freeman, there's a steam locomotive in the middle of the ground there.
well, I was the one who had organized for that to be transferred to. It wasn't there originally.
Where was it? Tell us where it was.
It was being used on the Bath Estate plantation.
That's right.
Um, and then years after it was, I always had noticed it in a sort of rubbish dumping area of the grammar school at the back.
Stick a pin in this so that those persons who will read or listen to this years later, at the back of the grammar school, just above the playing ground, in a corner,
Yes, about in the corner. You
is
remember there,
where
right?
that
Yeah.
locomotive was pretty much abandoned among the
Yes.
weeds.
Yeah, it
And
was
that's where I saw
abandoned.
it. So when I left the
Yes.
grammar school in 1982 to come to the States, that's where it was. And then when I came home in 1986, I saw that it had been removed or transferred to the old mill, which
Yes.
I
So
think was a
then
good idea.
there I think I was chief cultural officer at the time.
What
But anyway,
influenced you to
I
do
was,
that, Raymond?
what's that? Sorry.
What influenced you to make that decision?
I just didn't. That artifact I felt had a history to it, and it was being used, in industry in Dominica, and and of course the fact that it is an artifact. You don't have those many of those as such, as exhibits, so in Dominica. So then, when I'm not sure what they were doing with the Carnival City, and then when I heard they were bringing a crane to take the thing and to take to one dump it, well, I'm not sure at the time, where I don't know where, and I called and I made calls and I intervened. I basically intervened and asked them, don't throw away that steam engine. I want it at the old mill. Bring it to the old mill as a museum piece, as an artifact. It's a very important part of our history. We cannot throw it away or dispose of it or whatever it is. So I got a guy to make a flat concrete space, just a small space at the old mill. And then we brought the steam engine and we placed it on the concrete slab. And then years after, because we realized it was taking rain and everything, and that would maybe increase the rate at which it would deteriorate, we built a covering. So there's a galvanized covering over the steam engine to give it a little more years of existence. Many more
Yeah.
years, I hope. Many
Let
more
me let
years.
me ask this question. I know that Dr. Lennox Sunday Church has been very involved in rehabilitating the Fort Shirley, the battlements at Fort Shirley, and painting the cannons, to kind of what you call arrest any deterioration in the metal, because metal rots, of course. Has that been done with that artifact? Has it been coated with some sort of epoxy or something to kind of?
Yes. Well, when I was there at the time, I think twice I gave it, we sprayed it like the automotive spray.
Yeah,
So I
yes.
got one of the guys who does that work on vehicles, Warrell Williams at Canefield, to come and look at it and spray it in a color, almost the same color as the original.
Was it red
So
or brown?
he was brown, kind of a goldish brown, maybe, or
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so he did that about twice. That the coating I felt would help to preserve it as well. So,
Yes.
so that we were able to do, and the steam engine is still there. People admire the steam engine one. Also, the house where the actual water wheel is.
Yes.
That house had, I remember years ago, was deteriorating many years ago, and I was able to put a project to the U.S. Embassy, and they gave us the funds, and we were able to restore that house
Amazing.
by the wheel itself, and then we set up a museum upstairs. Downstairs is another type of museum again. So at least we have that structure there.
Mhm. So
Um,
basically, what you're saying, Raymond, is that the Old Mill Center is not simply a place where you maybe have a bit of a gallery. I know you've got a gallery with portraiture and so forth, but you also have exhibits of Dominica's industrial past in the sugar industry, which is the wheel that was used to grind the sugar cane, and its lime industry, which is where that steam sort of tractor came from. It came from the L. Rose and Company lime works.
yes, that's right. And then we were able to also rehabilitate the house. It was the manager's office, the manager of the old mill when it was operating many, many years ago. Remember, as time goes by, those houses begin to deteriorate. So we had to renovate that house. And then higher up on the hill where the manager actually lived, it was the manager's house. That I think the hurricane destroyed as well. Hurricane David destroyed. So we had to restore that building. And then we opened it up as a dance studio. So we've been using it as a dance studio. And then there's a long wall by the roadside by Old Mill that wasn't there before. So I wrote a project to UNESCO that's many years ago, and they approved of it, and we were able to construct um, a wall using flat stones. Well, the outer layer of the wall facing the street has, well, and both inside and out. Um, the builder used flat stone, so it looks like it's you know a building that where we use stones. It looks like that kind of a wall, but that's another project again that we were able to accomplish.
Then
Um,
this is a
yeah.
wonderful, wonderful bit of expose because what I'm thinking is, would you be willing to, let's say, work with a Dominican organization like Rebuild Dominica or a group of Dominicans to do a documentary on because on the Old Mill Cultural Center? Because I don't think there's a documentary on it. If there is, then that's fine. But it'd be good to have you be the narrator, to go to the tractor, to go to the old manager's house, to go to the water wheel, to go through the area where the gallery is set up, so that we can get a sense of this has been the only plantation in Dominica that's been restored to some degree of utility, not as a sugar mill, of course, but some utility as a place for cultural rendition and a place where our artifacts, are stored, and where, of course, we've got a certain degree of archaeological framing because we are framing the archaeology of the sugar plantation, the stoneworks, the chimney is still there, I believe.
Yes, yes. In fact, after the Hurricane Maria, I think it was, some people public noticed a few cracks. So they drew it to my attention. When I looked, I saw a few, and right away we asked, well, I told the minister, but I said we have to reinforce that chimney because it's a very tall chimney. We cannot afford to have cracks in the chimney. And it had about maybe four or so straps, steel straps that went around the chimney, like at
Yeah,
different
bands, yeah.
levels, um, or belts, or bands. So then I was able to it was a Haitian guy builder who did it for us. So he repaired all the cracks on that chimney, and he was able to put in another four again additional belts or straps, steel straps.
Yes,
So now there are about 8 or 9 of them on the chimney to
yes.
reinforce and to strengthen the chimney. I was very, very
Outstanding.
happy about that because you know places like that need renovation from time to time.
Yeah.
They need to be rehabilitated from time to time to ensure their existence and to
Mhm.
lengthen the time that they are with us, still with us.
Do we have a Dominican National Arts Council that looks after, things like that?
We no longer have the Dominica Arts Council, but we have a National Cultural Council. Yes,
Is it
that was.
Dominican government oriented or is it a nonprofit?
Dominica government oriented. In fact, it was created by law, by a Culture Act in 1981. Again, Alwyn was the one taking the lead on that, and this with the government, and they created this Culture Act, which was passed in Parliament. And within the act, they created the National Cultural Council, which has authority to raise its own funds, to carry out its own projects. And so it's been operating since that time, hand in hand with the cultural vision. You hear more about the cultural vision. I guess the NCC operates more in the background, but it has been doing work, substantial work, as a matter of fact, during the years of existence. Yeah.
And who's the current chairman or chairwoman?
The current chairwoman or person is Rosalind Paul, who is the former Minister of Government for Culture. She retired, and then they asked her to. And then the Chief Cultural Officer, that's Urson Matthew, he's the Deputy Chairman now. Yeah, the work goes on.
The work goes on. Well, as we come to the end of this interview, which has been fascinating, I mean, and we haven't even touched all the things we possibly could, so we'll maybe have to do a second. Would it be the case that, let me frame it another way. What, in your view, after all these years, more than 50 years of involvement in culture, what does culture, the word culture mean to you, in particular where it concerns Dominica?
Yes, well, I mean, the simplest form of definition of culture is the way of life of a people. You know, it just takes in everything, but in a sense, it does take in everything. So it's all the experiences and all the traditions and the values and then you have all the developments and the evolutions that have taken place through the years. So it's an accumulation of all the knowledge and the understanding and the research and the practices that has been handed down and what has been created through the years, and what is now a full a sort of a sum total of all of those experiences and all of these values and all of these traditions that have been handed down to us, and a lot of what has been created in recent times. So, and it takes in the material, it takes in the intellectual, it takes in the spiritual, and our van, and not just the arts and arts and culture, of course, is arts. The arts, of course, are a main part of culture as well, but then a lot of the other aspects of culture, because you have traditions that have been there for a long time, and not just in arts, if you want to put it that way, but some of the agricultural traditions, some of the cuisine traditions, some of the costume traditions, some of the and the language. Culture takes in, language, takes in your oral traditions, your costuming, your religions, and your religious practices.
Your written work, your publications, right?
Your written work, your publications, your documentation, and of course all the expressions and the arts, the dance, the music, the theater, and then your values as well. Dominicans have been very hospitable and kind, and all of that is part of our culture.
Let me stick a pin in that. Let me ask you to stick a pin. Let me ask you to stick a pin in that. I'm going to say a few things, Brother Raymond, and I want you to finish it because it will lead into what I'm going to say. Birds of a feather
flock together.
Waste not.
Want not.
A stitch in time
saves nine.
Make hay
while the sun shines.
Honesty
is the best policy.
Raymond, I said this at the funeral of Ambassador Curtis Ward of Manchester, of St. Elizabeth, Jamaica. Well, I was honored to be asked to do the eulogy. He was the prime minister of this area. He came in 68, and I've known him since college days. And when I said that from the pulpit, everyone in the congregation was able to do exactly what you did, but 90% of those persons were Jamaican. They were not Dominican, right? So we came from the same value engineering. And that is a concern. And I will send you some work we've done on civics that we have, where there is a generation of Dominicans. If I ask them the same things that I just asked you, they may be able to give me about 50%. You were 100% this afternoon. Flawless. You didn't grasp, you didn't fumble, you didn't grope, you were precise. Which goes to the culture of civics and the culture you were talking about, who we are known to have been a hospitable and kind people. Is that changing? And if so, how? And what can we
Yes,
do? Yeah, go ahead, please.
I think so. I think, you know, as time goes by, and people use the word evolution a lot, which is what happens, um, but things change. And maybe I should add that some things change for the better, and some things don't change for the better. Let's put it, well, if I could put it that way, and not changing for the better. So maybe not all change necessarily is what I mean. Naturally, change is part of life. But we used to be, one of the things that maybe we are losing to a certain extent is our values in terms of love and neighborliness and respect, especially respect for our elders, for our neighbors, for our friends, being hospitable to visitors and strangers or to other Dominicans like ourselves, being kind. Um, but what we are seeing, and then those the elderly have probably still have a lot of and carry a lot of those values of respect and so. But and maybe and a lot of young people, I think, have carried some of those values as well. But I think we're losing maybe among the younger population some of the respect that we would have liked to see, that would like to see. I think we're
Stick a pin
becoming
in that,
maybe.
Raymond. Stick a pin in that, Raymond. So when our father left the British Army, his first job was as a soil conservation officer. No, his first job was as a police officer at Fort Young. And his first arrest was for the use of profanity in the street. Raymond Lawrence, you could not curse in the street in Dominica when I was a child, you know. It was an
Right,
arrestable
yes,
offense. Speak to
precisely,
that, please.
precisely.
Speak to that, please.
Yeah, and all of that is part of respect, um that Dominicans had, not that people didn't curse, but then you didn't find it so widespread and rampant and just off the cuff like what's happening now, and the aggression sometimes you see and experience with some young people especially. Um, and the courtesy as well, the good, maybe you don't hear enough of the good mornings, good afternoons, I'm sorry, or excuse me or something. You hear it, but maybe we could have it more of that, like as we had before. And certainly the profanity, that is just disrespectful. I don't care whether it's in word of mouth, whether you're speaking, whether you're singing, whether you're whatever. It's disrespectful.
Okay.
Um,
Stick a pin in that. I
especially
can't remember
to
her first. Stick a pin in that. I can't remember her first name, but she's the daughter of Norris Prevost. She went to MIT. He was the valedictorian at the Convent High School. Very bright girl. And she invited me to Harvard University about 20 some years ago. I met a Jamaican mathematician, and he said something I'll never forget. He said, Christian, music is the soundtrack of life itself. That means if you have melodious music that is high minded and calming, so too it will affect the society where it is normally played. And if you have music that's discordant and profane and does not have any redeeming quality, so too that kind of music will affect the society where it is normally favored or played. Your comments.
Yes. The thing is, and as I'm a culture person, what I have always understood as culture, culture has such wide definition sometimes. But one of the things about culture, I think, is that whatever we create now, whatever we're doing in culture now, should try to uplift, generally speaking, uplift people's consciousness. It should try to elevate our standards in all areas. It should try to strengthen our sense of pride, national dignity, strengthen our national cultural expressions. So, in other words, whatever we're creating, whatever we're doing, should try to bring us up, should try to take us up, almost like taking us to another, rather than bringing us down. So in the music, if we're talking about music, if we begin to use profanity and just go into all kind of derogatory kind of a level, then I don't think we're bringing the, according to my definition of the culture, I don't think we're lifting people up. I don't think we're sort of bringing about a national consciousness of pride and dignity and identity that we can be proud of.
So let me
Um,
ask you this. Let me ask you this. If I were to ask you, Brother Raymond, if there's a
sorry,
cultural,
go ahead.
if I were to ask you, is there a cultural division website on Dominica that I could access that would give what is the mission statement and vision statement of the division of culture? Could I find that online?
Yes. Uh-huh.
So, what would be the
Cultural.
mission, in your view, then? What would be the mission of a Department of Culture as you ran it?
Well, the mission of the cultural division, and we have them at the Old Mill Cultural Center too. But anyway, the vision would be to help to promote and preserve, Dominica's culture in all its forms, in a manner that uplifts, in a manner that elevates, in a manner that has positive impact and growth, in a manner that is befitting the national identity of the country, and in a manner that um, helps to make us a better people in all its form, in all its form, in all our forms. Um, so that is what the mission should be. It's
But
not
it is
just
not, is it?
um,
It is not, is it,
not
Raymond?
just a matter of just doing any and anything and saying it's culture. I don't know. To me, there is a fine line between that. And again, sometimes if you say that, some people say, "Oh, but it's creativity. Let the people do what they want," and so on. I know people can come up with that, but that is not my vision of culture. And that's
Yes.
somebody's vision may differ to mine. But I'm
No,
saying that
no.
whatever we do in culture should strive for excellence. It should strive for higher heights. Whatever we do should try to take us, should try to, even if we're not, we're not getting there yet, but at least we're striving for something that is excellent, that is worthy of the effort of whatever we're going to do is worth doing well. Whatever we're going to do is worth doing well. So we should really try to improve on our standards, improve on every aspect of the culture with a positive vision in mind, with a healthy vision in mind, and try to promote those aspects of the culture that really help to strengthen identity and give us a sense of pride, and identity as a country and as a nation.
Well said. Well said, Brother Raymond. I'm a critique of the current Creole Festival and its culture. Um, Before I left Dominican in 81, we started Frontline Bookstore. I was the president of Frontline Bookstore Cooperative. Eddie Tulor, my brother and friend of blessed memory, was the general manager, and I left. We put out 3 magazines because I believe in the power of the written word. And of course, Irwin Andre and I started Poncasse Press in 1992. We've put out about 44 books. He's done maybe about 20. I've done about maybe 8. And then we've helped other people to publish. We've not done it all ourselves. We've encouraged other people to publish under our masthead. And what we see as a glaring deficit in the Creole Festival thing is that we have all these foreign artists to the derogation and disservice of local artists. But there is no book after almost 30 years, close to 25 years now, that speaks to what that cultural event means. There's no regular magazine that plumbs the depths of the philosophy behind it. What is it about? What does it represent? And so it has now devolved, I feel, into a fete. You know, people come, they drink, sometimes they fight and so forth. And there's nothing that is inherently dignified or redeeming that is captured in written form that you can have for the ages, that people can take when they live with them and they go back to England, United, wherever they came from, and they can read about the history of Dominica, the history of the Creole Festival, even the background of the artiste. The background of the artiste, because what the written word does, in my view, is gives you a sort of yardstick by which to judge from one year to the next. But if nothing is recorded, if nothing is, let's say, rendered in word, then there may be that difficulty. Comment, please, on that and what we can do to make events like Independence, the Creole Festival, more meaningful, where they, to use your words are excellent, they're worthy, they're worth doing well, they are healthy to the body and to the mind, and they instill a degree of national pride.
Yeah, well, it's all of those. It's all of those that we keep that vision, we keep that approach, and we maintain strategies that can help achieve those goals, the goals of striving for excellence at all times in everything that we do. Also, in promoting the identity of the country, that's important as well. We are a Creole culture with a Creole people, a Creole identity. And Dominica's Creole could be different, let's say, to maybe what other people call Creole in a sense.
It can't be anybody else's. It can't be Haiti's Creole. It's not Guadeloupe's Creole. It's not Martinique's Creole. It's very unique to the flora and the fauna and the history of the island, wouldn't you say?
Yes. Well, I mean, it's because Creole in a way maybe has different. If it's in a dictionary, you'd probably have to have different definitions of Creole, because I notice people are using Creole in different ways. But in the case of Dominica, we've specifically been influenced by, African, French, English, Kalinago. And we have a specific type of culture here that we call our Creole culture. So there is that aspect of the Creole. And then there's a Creole now that connects and identifies with other similar Creole languages, Creole speaking people. That's another level of Creole again, more to do with language, with Guadeloupe, Martinique, and Lucia, Haiti. All of that is very important as well to maintain. So while you're promoting the regional type of Creole connect languages, you're also promoting your own expressions from Dominica as well.
Yeah.
So it's important that we maintain whatever, if we say we're doing a Creole, whatever it is, that we maintain that Creole theme. How, it's important that we maintain and not stray too much or water down too much or dilute that image too much, that thrust, that goal.
Brother Raymond, let me ask you to stick a pin, because the critique we make is that it has lost its way. That it's now a big fete, with all kinds of things that have nothing to do with the original idea and doesn't speak to our Creole culture. Let me tell you what it in fact is, or how it is in fact Creole culture is defined. Creole culture is defined as a distinct syncretic culture arising from the blending of French, Spanish, African, and Native American traditions, or Kalinago, in Louisiana and the Caribbean. Historically, it denoted a people of European and/or African and Native American descent born in the New World rather than in Europe, now representing a diverse, predominantly Catholic identity, often defined by unique foodways, music, and dress. Okay, so we're talking about our cuisine, our music. That's a blend of the African and the European and the Kalinago. So it is not reggae. It is not, you know, Brahms and Mozart and Beethoven. It's a blend that is unique. And what I feel, and a lot of us who are thoughtful believe, is that it has now seemed to be in the case that the Creole Festival is simply a money-making enterprise that is all things to all people, including a lot of filthy music that has nothing to do with Creole, that has debased our culture and made it very savage and barbarian. I'll be blunt to say to you that the attraction for me of a Raymond Lawrence is the way you speak. Raymond, I'm not sure you ever heard yourself, but your voice is melodious. I'm not trying to flatter you, but your diction is very calming and positive. When I can listen to you for a long time because of the way you speak, and the way you speak, I believe, reflects a degree of um, dignity. You are possessed of gravitas, but dignity. You are a dignified human being, and you represent the dignity of our culture, which is why I wanted to speak to you for a very long time, because a lot of what I hear, frankly, is undignified, is filthy, and is unbecoming of a nation state that is going to be respected by others around the world. My view, your thoughts.
Well, thank you, first of all, for the compliments. I mean, I thank God, that He has given me the voice and a level of expression. Thank you very much, Gabriel. And coming from you, you're such an articulate, and intelligent and wise man. That's coming from you is a huge compliment as well. So thank you very much for that. But I do agree um, with you, Gabriel. I think it sort of touches on what I was saying, that whatever we do, whether in the arts or in other areas of our development, or I shouldn't degrade. It shouldn't degrade. It shouldn't, as I said earlier on, bring us down, bring us to a lower level. Um, and I mean, it's a lot of all of us, in Dominica, in the world, fairly intelligent people. We know what brings us up. We know what brings us down. You know what sort of is like a very uh, not not a wonderful expression, not a positive expression of our culture. We know that. Um, so I would really urge us in Dominica to strive for positive expressions, for expressions that take us higher than we already are, for expressions that strive for excellence. We have to try to avoid um, the what brings us down, the filthiness, and the profanity and all of that. We don't have to put all of that into whatever we're doing. No. Our culture can be decent. Our culture can be respectful. Our culture can be dignified. And that's the way I think we should be going. To a large extent, that's how we have been going. And I think we should try to maintain it. And rather than trying to debase or, trying to contaminate or water down or degrade the levels of our expressions in Dominica, we should be trying to promote healthy and positive and aspects of our culture that we can be proud of, that could build our sense of national identity and pride. So, in a sense, I agree with all what you've said, Gabriel, that it will make us a better people.
Indeed.
It will make us a better people. Yeah.
Raymond, I just want to take a moment to thank you, Pearl Christian, the late great Alwyn Bully, the other members of the staff at the Miss David, Jacinta David, I think worked with you at one point, and the others who worked with the Division of Culture. Our teachers, our illustrious teachers like Dorothy Levy, Kay Polidor, many others who taught us well. And certainly people like Dr. Irvin Andre, Lennox Honeychurch, Arundel Thomas, Hubert Charles, Henry Volney, those who sought to engrave on the national mind, like Premier Leblanc did, the power of the written word and publishing our history and having it be taught in our schools. I want to thank all of those persons, people like Jeff Charles, who in the early days of radio was a phenomenal force for good in way of the way he conducted himself in word. And you, of course, being a good student, you've followed that tradition. I wanted to take this as an opportunity to not just thank you personally, but thank all of those who provided what I call an enabling environment, you see, because we are all but a product of our environment, our parents, or teachers, the uh, uh, society in which you were born. And as we conclude, I'm going to ask you about a few, maybe one or two things about your personal, the things about Dominica that's special to you in way of our natural environment and the role of the botanic gardens, and that will be the way we close it out. What in our natural environment has really animated and given sort of color and contour to Raymond Lawrence, and in that context, being a Roseau-born person, what has been the role of the Dominica Botanic Gardens?
Well, I thank God that I was born in Roseau. I think everything has a reason and a purpose. And there was a reason and a purpose for me having been born. First of all, to my parents, to have such wonderful siblings, to be born in Roseau, because I found that in Roseau there were many things that were close to accessing for me: school, church, the bank, the business places. Up to now, in fact, I still live in Roseau in our family home. So maybe that goes to show how much I'm attached to it, and attached to Roseau. I know sometimes people criticize Roseau, but there are, like everywhere else, advantages as well to living in Roseau, in the Roseau area, in the Roseau space. Um, and I have always loved Dominica, our culture, our history, um, our expressions. Thank God I've always been working after school. As I mentioned earlier on, I got a job in the summertime as soon as I left school in radio, which kind of changed the trajectory of my life, because I had never thought of radio before as a job, or much less as a career. Or even culture as a job and as a career. I hadn't thought about that either. And yet that was the direction that I was led into broadcasting. And for instance, when I worked at the radio station, again, I didn't have a car at the time, but I could walk because DBS is on Victoria Street. So I walked to work and back for a number of years before I could get a vehicle. So again, living in Roseau added to that, that was an advantage. And just the friendliness of the people, as all Dominicans are, just you find the same friendly people in Roseau, at least the people I grew up with, and the friends that I had in my wonderful family. I have to thank them very much. All of that helped to make me into the kind of person that I became, and the individuals that I worked with at DBS. You had Jeff Charles, Barnett Defoe, Alvin Knight, Ferdinand Frampton, Daniel Corderon, Tim Dura, Ted Daly, I mean, you name it, Sherman Green, all the wonderful people that I had the opportunity to work with. And in culture, Alwyn Bully, when I joined him, he was the first. And then Pearl Christian, also, I should mention, has been a wonderful co-worker of mine for many years. And I even knew her before I joined Cultural Television because she used to dance together with me in the downtown dancers. So I've known her practically all my life, let's put it that way. And she's a very gifted, talented musician and artist, and also a very wonderful person, a wonderful friend. So, and having the opportunity to have been working with her for so many years, I think is another God-given gift and blessing. The same way I was able to work with Alwyn as well for so many years. And all the people that I had the opportunity to work with as well in the cultural division. It's almost like before I retired, there was a set of officers like Pearl and Noreen Joseph and Daryl Phillip and Early 10 and so. And then when I got back to cultural division, it's almost like another set of workers with Wilson Matthew and Giselle Hyacinth and Dorel Diole and so on. All these wonderful people I had the opportunity to work with. And then the attractions in Roseau, and you mentioned the Botanic Gardens. I really, my thinking on the gardens has always been that the role of the garden should remain the role of a botanic gardens. That was what it was created for, and that is what it has been, and that is what I think it should continue to be. Because sometimes you hear of different plans for the gardens that don't involve the trees and if whatever is grown, the whole scenic environment of the gardens. And I would appeal to the government to maintain in fact, to improve, enhance the gardens as a botanic gardens, bring in new trees that some of the trees we've lost. Try to bring in trees from overseas, and that's what was happening before, and have some exotic and unique trees and plants and fruits in the gardens. That was what was there before. In fact, there was a time many years ago when Dominica, the gardens were one of the best botanic gardens in the Caribbean.
No, 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 Raymond. No, no, no. In the world. There are
And
reports I've read. In fact, there's the reports I've read by people of global stature that have said that, and the Dominican Academy of Arts and Sciences maintains a website on the gardens. And I just found a book on the gardens from 1907 or 1908. I will send it to you, and I'm trying to get DNO to put it online so more Dominicans can see the quality of institution that we had 100 years ago in rendered in written form. It's almost like a documentary, Raymond. The person is coming through the Elmsall Gate and going through and telling you the different trees, the vernacular, the common name and the scientific name, purposes, outstanding. It's a book, maybe no more than 50 pages. And so that is the quality of designation that we had. It was one of the best little botanic gardens in the world, not in the Caribbean, in the world. And
so then I
I'll
would
let you know that
appeal.
a couple of years ago, we got comments and requests by the Ukraine, government of Ukraine, because we had the first Botanic Gardens website. I'm not even sure there's a Dominica one, as in the Dominica government, but the Academy, that's Dr. Clayton Shillingford, botanist, Dr. Dave Shillingford, and Raglan Rivera, with the help of Allington James and Francis Richards, the husband of Daphne Richards. They helped put that site together with old pictures. And so that's why I wanted to get your opinion of it, because you went to school next to the gardens, both at the grammar school and at the prep.
I would recommend to any government, not just this government, future governments, to maintain the gardens as a botanic gardens and to restore and rehabilitate the gardens and help and strive towards making the gardens one of the best gardens, and as you say, in the world. That should be the aim now, the goal. Nothing else should be. The goal of the garden should become, it should be the best gardens that we can make it into. And also the protection of green spaces. And we're talking about Roseau, because you asked me about Roseau. Roseau doesn't have many green spaces left. So again, I would appeal to government and Roseau City Council and whoever else has some responsibility for Roseau to, first of all, preserve the green spaces. Try not to put another structure in the, because we don't have a lot of green spaces in the Roseau. So where we have the green spaces, we want to preserve them as green spaces and try not to put up any structures within those green spaces, because we need a balance of environmental protection and preservation, and also structural and so development. But we need to maintain and preserve and promote our green spaces, because that is a form of attraction as well,
Yes.
and beautification within the Roseau space. So that is what I would say in answer to what you had asked me about Roseau and growing up in Roseau.
And Raymond, I just want to say that oftentimes, when we speak of culture, we think at Dominica in particular, bread and bourgeois and saltfish and bakes and madras and so on, but that's a very limited view of culture. I'm sure you'd agree. What I'm hearing from you in your very effusive set of commendation for the Botanic Gardens is a sense that culture is more than that, and includes, a sense of loving a natural aesthetic, understanding the importance of natural, preserving the natural environment for generations yet unborn. So Raymond, I know I've detained you for a length of time beyond that which we may have intended, but we had a lot to talk about, and we're not done. But I know that Sunday is the day of rest, and I have not only detained you, but I've burdened you with all these questions. My apologies in advance. But I think it's very important for our country and our people to honor their greats, and you are certainly in that category. And for us to be able to hear from someone who spent so much of his life, from you were going out to places like Grenada representing Dominica at age 15. I mean, that's a long time, Raymond. I know you're just about, what, 45, 50 now. So, boy, you're going out to represent. You're going out to represent Dominica before you were born. If I were to use my sort of very generous designation of age to you, I know you're a senior, but you've aged well. Raymond, any final words to young Dominicans and others as to what they could do to help the division of culture, to be also cultural preservation and promotion advocates? Any final words coming from your vantage point of all these years of contributions to the betterment of our nation?
Yeah, well, simply, I just want to encourage everybody to live and strive towards positive goals in their own lives, move towards greater accomplishments in their lives, not to give up. When you set out on certain goals and certain ambitions, you try to accomplish what you want to accomplish. You try to also trust in God. I mean, God is the one who created all of us, and I know in my life, I could never have done anything without God. And I was brought up that way, by my parents and everything, a strong belief and faith in God. That's very, very key, to life and to everybody's lives, I think. And He's always there to help us. And God loves us and He cares. But to maintain that positive outlook in life, because sometimes difficulties in life and challenges can sometimes tend to weigh us down. And we have to be careful that we do not become distressed or even depressed about some things that may happen in our. Always try to look for a silver lining. Always try to look for some good that come out of something that has happened negatively, so that you always maintain a positive outlook. And because you maintain that positive outlook. You're going to act in a positive way. That whatever you do should help build, should help develop, not destroy. And our culture should always try to build and not destroy. So whatever we do in all our areas of development in Dominica should help to take Dominica to another level. And we should all finally be supporting each other. I think love, as simple as it is, a word, maybe is the most important word in the world. No wonder the Bible says God is love. That's a very simple way to describe God, that God is love. And sometimes we forget that. That is what the essence of God is, love. He loves everybody. That's why he created. And we too should have that love in our hearts for our families, our friends, and for our people, our communities, and so. And love really means that you want the best for whoever it is, for everybody else. As a matter of fact, you want the best. You don't want to want bad for them. You don't want anything bad to happen to them. So the same goes for our community, love for community, love for country, and love for God. We think that we're trying to do something positive for the country and help to bring the country up to another level. So I think with that, that's what I would want to say. And thank you very much, Gabriel, for inviting me onto your program. I tried to answer all your questions. I tried.
You did well. And one of the things I discovered, we share something in common. I was born on January 1st, and you were born on January 14th,
14.
which means they say that they are highly disciplined, organized, hardworking, and dependable. Those are the attributes of a Capricorn. And from my observation of you over the course of my life, because I've known you since I knew myself, I can say that that's a fitting. Those are fitting sort of attributes or characteristics of not just the Capricorns I've known, but certainly of you, as someone who's really dedicated himself, all his life to excellence and cultural rendition in way of dance and in way of the division of culture. Raymond Lawrence, thank you very much on behalf of a grateful nation, certainly my family, but I think I speak for the overwhelming majority of Dominicans who, even after you retired, keep pulling you back to be the master of ceremonies at a great many events. I've had occasion to see you in your white tuxedo and other where, narrating and commentating and providing a degree of dignity and grace and kindness to many national events. So thank you, sir, because many countries do not have a Raymond Lawrence, and they are much poorer for that lack of. So sometimes we do not know how blessed we are as a people. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Gabriel. And enjoy the rest of your Sunday and your weekend.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Yes. Okay.